All right. So I think it takes a second or two for the stream to start, and I like to take that moment to test the microphone here and sort of verify on my other screen that the feed is live. Okay, welcome guys. Just like always, wish this was under a better circumstance, and I wish I could have gotten on early. Wish I was running a stream of, oh, hey, let's talk about the awesome Plumas County and the amazing historical resources and the amazing place to visit here. Instead, I'm here with you because it is on fire. So, this will be somewhat short. I have several things to get to. I did monitor for the past several hours. I distilled all the information I could from the official sources, and I can summarize that information and give it to you now. I want to start out with what the sheriff of Plumas County wants you to know. He went up on the community meeting tonight at 7, and he says there are some holdouts who are refusing to evacuate from Taylorsville in that area and in the red zone in general, and please get out. The area around Arlington Road in Taylorsville is not safe. The weather lady who was giving a forecast basically used the word dire, referring to the storms coming in and the instability that will bring to the region. They do not have control of the fire near Taylorsville. There's too many unknown factors to predict what it will do and how big it will get. And if anybody does remain in the red zone, especially throughout tomorrow, then they are going to complicate the situation. It is not safe to be in, and you are urged with as much urgency as possible to leave that area. If you have not done so, please get out. So there is a phone number that the sheriff has said on the community meeting. If you are unable to get out, if the car doesn't start, or you don't have wheels, or there's a complication, if this is a non-medical issue, you just don't have a way to get out, please call this phone number, 530-283-6414, and they'll be happy to help you. 530-283-6414. If you need general information about the fire, there's a call center hotline for the civilians, the non-media, so you and me, which is general hotline for the Dixie fire, 530-538-7826. That was the main thing to tell you guys about regarding that meeting. So the next thing I want to get to out to you guys is there are new evacuation maps and orders, and they've split the evacuation map into two. Unfortunately, there's one here for Tehama County, which if you look in the description of this video, I've just updated the links. Go to the very bottom where it says Dixie Fire. You're going to be able to click on this and see this just like I'm seeing it here. That's Tehama County. And then, of course, also linked is the traditional Butte and Plumas County map that was combined, thank goodness. I hope they combine all three in the future, but at the moment, this is what we're working with. As you can see, the evacuation zones have increased, especially down by Quincy. We do have new evacuation information for the Quincy area. I want to show you guys how you can get to it. The links are in the description, like I said, of this video. But if you go to plumascounty.us, as in Umbrella Sam, plumascounty.us, you're going to see this page here. And down here is to the right, says Dixie Fire Info. Click on that. And you get the very latest information on which roads are closed and what new evacuation orders are in place. So to distill today's community meeting, which was long drawn out and fraught with terrible audio problems, this is the most important stuff coming at you right now. So today, sometime around noon, they issued new mandatory evacuation zones north of Chandler Road, and that includes the north side of Chandler Road from Oakland Camp Road to Highway 70 East. It does not include south of Chandler Road. from Oakland Camp Road. Okay, just the north. And so there's more that the sheriff said on that. So let me get to his quotes that I wrote down. He said the evacuation order was issued in the Quincy area, 17V, Victor, north side of Chandler Road from Open Camp Road east to Highway 70. Oakland. I can't read my own handwriting. This includes the areas north of Chandler Road to the southern border of Zone 16. Zone 16 is the Mount Huff area. So, to repeat myself here more clearly this time, at 12:20 p.m. on the 24th, Saturday, an evacuation order was issued in the Quincy area, Zone 17V, Victor, the north side of Chandler Road, from Oakland Camp Road east to 70. This includes areas north of Chandler Road to the southern border of Zone 16, which is the Mount Huff area. So that's the area north of Chandler Road, not south. So if you are unable to evacuate anywhere in this region, please call the phone number to get a ride, 530-283-6414. Now, people near Taylorsville, if you have not done so, go now. This is what the Plumas County Sheriff said today, the man himself. Arlington Road area is not safe. The fire is unpredictable and extreme, and about to get more unpredictable with the new weather's coming in forecast for Sunday. And during that community meeting, I like her. She gives us the straight dope, doesn't sugarcoat anything. She said, "Sorry, but the weather forecast is dire." So I do not ever want to give people a false impression of either safety or panic. And so I'm going to clarify that really carefully now. Yeah, the weather situation is dire. The fire itself is unprecedented in size. But that doesn't mean, oh no, I got to panic and do stuff. It's always best to just remain calm. All this means is the same thing it's meant for the last few days. The fire behavior and activity is unpredictable. That's why so many people need to be evacuated. It's best to do that before some potential a bad situation erupts. They are admitting that the potential for a very, very bad situation is very, very clear and present, and thus people get evacuated because of the danger. But that doesn't mean that apocalypse is in the forecast. It means erring on the side of caution is always the best thing, and there is real danger here. Even though they have all the people that they need, they are not understaffed. They even have backup reserves in place. The nightmarish terrain that they're working in, which is steep vertical cliffs, inaccessible high peaks, tons and tons of steep valleys and canyons, with some of the driest weather on record, where everything is so dry that any tiny ember will light anything that lands on. Those situations mean that they've really got to err on the side of caution, and they need to be able to respond at a moment's notice. If people are in the area, they will put down the good work they're doing in some neighborhood that's been evacuated to rush over to just evacuate other people. They have to drop everything they're doing and lose their progress. So your evacuation could be critical to this fire actually being contained or not. I can't stress this enough. You may be responsible for the destruction of your own neighborhood if you don't leave it. They may be doing really good work, protecting the neighborhood to the left, and you're over there on the right, and if they get word that somebody didn't leave, they drop what they're doing. They lose the enemy to that part of the wall. If you think about it like a city wall, they're manning. They have to go drop everything, rescue your butt, get you out of there, come back, and of course, it's too late to defend the same spot that they were in before. So you have to go. This is serious, and your window of opportunity for leaving by car is closing. Anybody who is in the red zones here. The most important places to leave are those by Taylorsville and Indian Valley, Crescent Mills, Greenville. You really should go. If you're on the west part of Quincy and to the northwest of Quincy, you really should go. And they were saying that anybody in the yellow area that is in the warning area really consider going too, because you'll probably be asked to leave anyway. And this would avoid the traffic jam problems, and it would allow them to just continue to fight the fire rather than stopping what they're doing to try to coordinate evacuation. Everybody who's knocking on a door is not fighting the fire, and is not patrolling for looters, and is not, keeping the situation at hand. So they're basically begging you, please help the situation. If you're asked to go, go. And if you feel like, you're on the borderlines and such, you should go of your own accord. So that's the most important information I can give you right now. I want to give you some good news too, and pop a couple of the myth bubbles here. Unfortunately, some misinformation got spread yesterday by people with that are good meaning, had good intentions, but accidentally spread a bunch of rumors and such. So I'm going to take a moment here to explain what happened and what is actually going on. So most of the rumors spreading is with good intentions, and it's people misunderstanding maps, it's people misunderstanding how firefighting works, or people not getting the memo about, hey, we are the fire department, we are going to start some fires on purpose. And then they see fire and they freak out. So I'm about to pop those myth bubbles. It's open question and answer time in the chat. Go ahead and ask me anything that you have as a question, and I'll either tell you or we'll find out together that information. Oh, sorry. Before I go into the myth bubble popping, I wanted to give you information about how you can evacuate and how you can find out what roads are closed. I found out a cool trick. So the sheriff kept saying, guys, you can go to Caltrans and for information on the road closures. And I found out a way to make the Caltrans map show you everything you pretty much need to know. So this is really cool. So what you do is you go to QuickMap. .dot.ca.gov. The link is in the description down there. And unfortunately, it's not just going to be like, oh, here's all the fire information. You got to click buttons to see it. But that's not many buttons, so I'll be happy to show you. So once you're here on the website, just zoom into the Allenor area in general, and it says Quick Map in the upper left-hand corner. There's this thing that says Options, and it's a pull-down menu. That's what the little triangles mean. So click everything. Just click on everything. It says facilities, cameras, county borders, road conditions, lane closures, incidents, blah, blah, blah. Maybe not snow plows. Then go to the Waze alerts as well, and you can click the master button there to make them all clicked. And so once you've done that, you've got all the info that you pretty much need. Caltrans is on it pretty diligently and will show you what the heck's open and what the heck's closed. This is awesome. This is pretty dang good. So the link to this area is in the description, and it won't look like this till you hit the buttons, but that's all you've got to do. So as you can see, still, more and more 70 is shutting down. And so if you're in the Quincy area, of course, you basically cannot go north out of Quincy / west, because that is shut down. You can call the information hotline. Once again, I want to keep saying that that phone number. The general call center hotline is 530-538-7826. If you've got questions, that one's going to be up to date a heck of a lot more than my stream here. So that's how you find out the road closure information in a very quick, digestible way. If you need further information, back here at the Plumas County website, when you click on Dixie Fire information, there's all kinds of extra news. It talks about what the fire's been doing, what shelters are open. Once again, plumascounty.us. And there's many more links here. And you can sign up for Code Red for even more information too. At the end of their video, at the very end, I want to show you this QR code. And it's sign up for Dixie Fire update emails. So if you take your phone right now, if you're on your computer, and you scan this with your camera app, it should show you a link. And you can sign up for the Dixie Fire email updates. That's pretty neat. But if you're already on your phone, there's a trick about this. you can take a screenshot of your phone and then do the QR code reading. I wish they had just, you know, put this in a different, like made a different post about it with all the links. But here you go. They're trying their best. I appreciate they're trying. So I'm going to pull this back away. Now, the misinformation stuff, there are some things that'll give you a sense of relief because it was flying all around on Facebook and such today, people with apocalyptic looking maps and such. And while the fire is of great concern in some areas where it's pretty much spreading without much check to it, that would be south of Indian Valley, where the webcam just burned up. I mean, the camera didn't, but the whole region next to it, webcam survived somehow. But the whole area, the thumbnail of my video is that the Indian Valley webcam, which we check every night, had the fire completely surround it and burn off the the vegetation. That's what we're seeing right here. That's why Taylorsville is not safe. It's right above Taylorsville right now. They need everybody out of there. Just go. Genesee Valley area, just think about just going. That's what the sheriff wants you to do. That's the best way you can help the situation. Let them do their thing and not worry about you being there. You guys give heart attacks to the firefighters when you do stay behind, no matter what your intentions are. So that is where the active fire is spreading around. That this whole area, they're trying to protect Twain and those places that they keep ignoring when people are asking in the chat. They're doing their best. Today there's a huge flare up by Paxton, and it cut off the citizen journalist Matthew Henderson. And so his videos we may not have going forward. But I do want to address the misinformation. First, what's going on, like where is the fire kind of spreading? It is very active at Division Hotel, the west side. And that's why Butte Meadows was evacuated. They have a strategy in place here called anchor and flank. And anchor, what that means is they pick a safe spot, like a big, area that really can't burn. That could be a big parking lot, a big dirt field, or some place where there's already in place fire lines, some place like that. And then they will flank. They'll try to go on either side of the fire and attack it at the same time with, everything that they've got during the day, like, airplanes, laying down retardant and that sort of thing. And as they were trying to do that over the course of the last 2 days, there was more activity than they had bargained for. And so they thought about it. And if it does get more intense, that's the way the wind was blowing towards, Butte Meadows over there. And so they didn't want to have to stop the good work that they were doing to try to evacuate people. So they told people to get out ahead of time. It's a contingency thing. If it goes worse, if it gets more intense, we don't want to have to stop the good work we're doing to help you evacuate. Just please go. So that is what that is about. It doesn't mean, this place is about to burn up or anything like that. It just means, that they're having major challenges here. But we know that from previous years, the fire has been very active in this area, which is pretty much sparsely to uninhabited. It's the place where a lot of cattle graze. It's a really rugged wilderness. They're trying to get the cattle out too. You don't really have to worry too much about people losing homes and such in here and cabins. They're trying to stop it out here in the wilderness before it gets towards the highway and towards these other populated places. So that's one of the myths that people are just, oh no, about that flank. It's bad. It's really bad. But it's far away from the communities at the moment that could be affected. So the other myth I got to burst is, is Paradise Magalia, really going to be affected? And the answer is, if new fires happen, yes. There have been several small ones that erupted as I was listening yesterday to the radio, and they were just people weed whacking and mowing lawns when they shouldn't be. And the sheriff of Butte County got up and had some extremely harsh words for people and said, for pretty much, for God's sake, guys, don't do anything to start a new fire. But those little fires were pounced on really quickly. They're over. One was at Orville at Kelly Ridge, and I heard about that, and they did a really good job responding. Little things have erupted in Butte County that were pounced on, and that would be the danger to the community. So no, don't let your guard down. There's people being idiots in the general vicinity. It's highly populated, and so, not everybody can be fire smart. And I don't mean to say that the people that did start fires were idiots. I just mean that that's a possibility, that an idiot could do something. And we are in red flag critical danger, and the forecast is, quote, dire. So far we've had the benefit of several days of really light to variable winds, and the thunderstorms coming in. The potential for lightning and moisture is going to make it all unstable, and the winds could increase. We don't know. But it's not good. It's hot. It's dry. There's new unstable moisture coming in, so it's not good. They have models and forecasts, and I don't believe that people should just discount what the models and forecasts say, but I do want to point out that I don't give them any credence, because fire prediction, megafire prediction, and modeling and stuff is in its infancy, and so is a lot about our understanding about the weather. So fire is continuing to surprise us. Don't be mad at CAL FIRE when they say, oh, our modeling regarding this spot fire here, the 70 spot fire, see how big it's gone, pretty wild. They said that they threw everything they had at it, and I do believe that's true. They did everything they could to contain it, but it just got out of hand because of the horrible conditions, the horrible weather, the extreme canyons, the fire load, the dryness, the inaccessibility, and the fact that the smoke grounded a lot of airplanes. They lost control, and faster than they thought they would, because the modeling did not account for certain factors. It's still in its infancy. So the only reason I'm saying that point is, don't look at models and say, oh, the model says everything will be fine. Okay, but the models are in their infancy, and they're work in progress. Do not get a false sense of security, and also don't get a false sense of panic or a false sense of danger. Just remain on the level. Know that there's a potential for great disaster here, but there are thousands of men and women doing everything they can to prevent it. The weather and things out of their control will determine what happens. That's why it's so important to evacuate. They are not giving people updates on individual communities and whether or not they should be afraid or comforted, because they don't know. That's why they're not giving the answers. And I wish that they would improve communication to the public. They're doing a great job explaining what they're doing. But it's like a surgeon explaining the finer points of surgery, and the public's outside saying, okay, but is the patient going to make it? Or what's the outcome? If a community, if a town is the patient, is it going to be unscathed to make a full recovery? Is it going to be partially impacted? What's going to happen? And they don't answer that part. They just say get out. And I think what they should be saying is what is the truth. We don't know. We'll do everything we can. We don't know what the outcome's going to be. So the public has gone to an extremely high stress level and a bit of rage. And I think better communication going forward is going to be going to do a lot to allay those fears and turn a pretty frustrated public into a very supportive one. I mean, people are still supportive in general, but they, if the answer is I don't know, they should be told that. So I got to pop the myth bubble of this thing up here. Almanor West. Here's finally some good news, guys. The reason that the rumor mill got out of hand right here about Almanor West and it being immediately in danger and blah 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 was a couple of factors. One, this line of of new fire activity appeared yesterday, all in the red, and it was far away from the existing line of the seat of the fire, which is down here, south of it and west of Butts Lake. Okay, locals call it Butts Lake, Butte. Butte Valley Reservoir is going to be on a map or whatever. It's Butts Lake. That's just what we call it. It was pretty far away, and all of a sudden they saw this red line erupt up here. And I want to put you guys at ease so that you feel good when you see something like this on a map rather than bad. I am happy with what I'm seeing and what I saw yesterday. This line right here is against the wind. Now, the wind was at, for most of the days, this is the way the wind works. The wind goes pretty much north or northeast out of the valley into the mountains during the daytime hours. It's hot air from the valley rising, heat rises, and that just pushes air upwards, up in altitude, up into the mountains. And then at night, coolness happens and moisture happens, and so the wind typically reverses, and you see wind going back down towards the valley at night. That's just a basic what happens in this region. That's typically what happens every night, every day for this time of the year. And so that gives firefighters an exciting opportunity at night, as long as the winds aren't very strong, and as long as they're generally predictable, which we've had the last couple of days. So they utilized a new window of opportunity, and I'm so happy to see this. So what the fire was doing was going north, 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 pretty much marching every single day, because during the day, that's where the wind's going, north. It's generally been marching towards Almanor West, to the west shore, and towards Chester. And so what they thought about doing this in this sector of the fire, this is now called the West Division, Division 1, they have a couple of tools that they can do to stop it. A is dozer lines. They can make new roads basically with bulldozers, and the fire will stop at the lines if they can work quickly enough and get them really, really solid. But that's reactive. It takes a while to build dozer lines. The second thing they could do is man existing lines, like from previous fires before, or take up existing roads, station it there, and try to stop fires from crossing the roads. And if there's not much wind, that's much easier. If there's fierce wind, that can be impossible, right? So they have air attack, which is pretty much the only thing you can do at the higher peaks that don't have roads. But the smoke for the last few days has been making that extremely difficult. Planes have been flying around looking for a way to drop, and yet not having much opportunity because they've got to see the ground. They get so close to the ground, the bellies of the planes almost scrape the treetops, and then they pull up. It's the most frightening thing to ever watch. And one day we'll do story time with that. If they can't see the ground, they might just collide with it. So they don't do drops. So what was their last option in their tool bag? And that was to work with the favorable wind conditions at night. Like I said, the fire marches north/northeast during the day. Winds shift though and blow back the opposite direction at night. That's perfect. So a lot of people, they mistakenly think water is the biggest tool for fighting fire. It's actually, you fight fire with fire. Mankind's been doing this for about 10,000 years or so, and so it's been successful for that long. Therefore, we still do it. That's right. The fire departments will actually start fires to fight fire. So here's the way it works. This is the highway. Here's 89 here. It is closed, by the way. I know this place like the back of my hand, and so a lot of people, when they saw this fire line right here erupt, they go, "Oh my God, the poor people, the poor homes, the poor structures." There's no structures over here. This is Belgium. I am very happy to see them light this on fire to stop the fire's progress. This is great. So what I'm going to call this is crossing the T. So if you think of the wind blowing pretty much almost due north at this area, then they cross the T, and that's how you know the firefighters did that. Fire goes with the wind. that's how you see normal progression of a fire, right? So if the wind's going north and they crossed it by making suddenly fire goes east and west in a straight line, that's humans. That's doing it on purpose. That's the fire department doing it on purpose, because what they're doing is this. They are making a scorched earth black line. That's the word they have for it. The black line is that we're going to burn off this section so that when the real fire gets to it, it will stop. As long as the winds aren't ferocious, it'll stop, and they can man this like a city wall. Archers up on the walls, so to speak, ready to zap it with water, get shovels out, fell some trees that might fall over the line and light this section on fire. They had this awesome opportunity to just create scorched earth in front of the fire. So I'll show you how it works here. This is the highway, and people's homes, cabins, little resorts in the communities are up here on this side, right up next to the lake. So there's actually quite a lot of Belgium over here. We're talking about a buffer zone. The joke about Belgium is that it was a country created just to keep the arch enemies of France and Germany separate, right? So if they ever fought each other again, they wouldn't destroy each other's countries. They'd destroy a different country at the front lines instead, and that country would have to rebuild. We'll call it Belgium. I'm sorry, that's a joke. But it's something that a lot of people use, and don't shoot the messenger. That's just a term others use. So this is Belgium. It's pretty much there aren't cabins over here. There's a road that goes to the reservoir, and then there's a campground and such by the reservoir here in this little section. But don't shed a tear for the fire that was going on here. Now, the rumor that this was unintentional happened by a couple of factors. Now, one of which was Matthew Henderson. I'm not calling him out. I'm not saying he's bad. He is remarkable. I respect him very much. He's the person that covered Markleyville as the fire was attacking Markleyville at the Tamarack fire, and he relocated here to cover the Dixie fire. But unfortunately, he just didn't know that when he drove here and he saw the fire, that this was on purpose. He saw the fire crews as they left the road part that he was on, because they were going down the line to start more of these on purpose fires to protect the area. And so he thought that it was the moving seat of the fire. He thought over here in this area was that this fire had already moved up to it, and that was incorrect. So yesterday, he kept saying live on his broadcast, "Oh no, this is so sad," and he got out and took pictures, and everybody was doing the crying face on Facebook. No. He was confused. He didn't get the memo that this was on purpose. He probably knows by today. I don't know, but he relocated. So what they did is light this on fire as a straight line, hoping that when this big fire comes, it will stop. I absolutely applaud this. If I were in charge, if I was in charge with what little information I know about fighting fires, I would do the same thing. I'd issue the same order, because this has been proven for thousands of years as an effective way to stop fires. It's called lighting a backfire. Do not confuse it with fire backing behavior. That's different. But it's called firing and lighting backfires. That's the term. So this is firing ops. And I think there's going to do more of it throughout the night. And at the community meeting, they were talking about using Humbug/Humboldt Road, which extends this way. And so this will probably be where they're going to try to stop it. They were basically saying as much, is that they're going to try to stop it from reaching Chester. And look what we have here. We have just what they were saying. The new red dots right here, that's them. They are creating a line, a black line. So it's a line of scorched earth. And so when the fire reaches that line, it won't have anything to burn. And they're trying to burn off much of the pine needles as they can, the little itty bitty trees. They're trying to keep the big trees alive as much as they can, but they might just be casualties in the war. Big trees are much more likely to withstand fire because their branches that could catch are much higher up off the ground. But the little trees are doomed. But in a way, that's their little tree sacrifice is just going to help the land heal. It'll fertilize the land with its ash, and the big trees will survive. We're in a drought, and too many trees growing with not enough water is not good anyway. It's more like just protect the ones that are already growing, that are already adults. This thinning out of the brush and the little trees is going to save the region. So I have very good optimism at the current moment for the west shore of Lake Almanor. I know it like the back of my hand. If you zoomed into any of the cabins around this area, I could probably name them and who owns a lot of them. You know, like I can't tell you. I am a local here. I don't live there, but I know exactly what is around here, and you don't have to be shedding tears. You know, this area is okay. It's okay to burn. There might be just a couple of things like structures, like mostly pump houses and weather stations and that sort of thing. But they have reassured everybody if there's cultural, historical assets like old cabins or like pioneer stuff or things from the gold rush, they protectively ring them and try to save them, just like they've been doing for the last century. So that was another good, refreshing thing to hear. Now, the next myth bubble that I want to pop here is that the Indians are somehow preventing the fire from being fought. That was unfortunate that they go up on the community town meeting, I think, yesterday or the day before yesterday. What they meant is that they're not going to bulldoze Indian graveyards on accident, making a fire line. Indian graveyards are not big, just like pioneer and white man graveyards are not big in this area. This is a sparsely populated region. So it's not like the Indians are saying don't fight fire on that mountainside. It's not like that. They give them a heads up. Would you please not make a road right here? Would you put it 15 feet to the right? You know, or 15 feet to the left, go around this little meadow or whatever, because that's a graveyard. And that's the same thing for a lot of the cemeteries of the pioneers and the gold rush miners, is their tombstones have fallen down into tall grass, and if they don't know where they are, a bulldozer could just crush all of them, and it would be sad. So no, the Indians are not saying don't fight the fire. They're saying please go around our graveyards, just like you go around white man's graveyards. That's it. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in chat. I'm trying to go ahead and answer all of that. I'm going to look at chat right now. So, yep, I'm glad. Hi, everybody, first, and I hope you guys are doing well. Yeah, Bugs. A lot of people did think the fire was spreading by Almanor West, but I'm happy as a clam that they did this. It is looking much less likely if they could stop the fire right here instead of at the highway itself. It's less likely the embers could go all the way across to the peninsula. You know, if the fire gets to the shore, it's very likely that it will light up the peninsula. It's not very far. You know, this is easily reached by boat. You know, to get to the peninsula. You know, I can't tell you how many minutes it would take by boat, and that's not really relevant because, you know, but could wind throw embers that far? Absolutely, especially if it was burning right on the shoreline. So the furthest back this way that they could stop the fire, the much less likely the bad scenario of it reaching the peninsula would happen, because then the fire would just go up that way. And they, of course, don't want that. So I'm happy as a clam that they did this work. And looking at Matthew Henderson's videos where he was sad and the audience was sad, myself and the other people in the know, we were trying to explain in chat, or I wasn't in his chat, but others were trying to explain, no, this is happy, this is good. They had a window of opportunity, they seized it, they seized the night, and as the winds were nice and dead almost, when they lit the fires, that mostly it just creeped along, burning the pine needles and the little bitty trees and the bushes, and we didn't see too many of the big trees go up. Some of them did, but that is making the situation so much better. Looking back at chat, how far from the west shore are the backburns? They're I can tell you that exactly. So you see that they kind of were starting. Let me try to get a better let's see here. Let's take down shaded relief. Let's turn off the fire for a second. Some of the roads are visible in this map. Humbug Road is one of their lines. And so they went driving around on the actual roads and lighting the fires on the south sides. You know, the south sides of these roads. There's other ones you can barely see, like, you know, Humboldt Cross Road and all these. And they were driving the roads, and then they would man the situation for a bit, as we saw in Matthew Henderson's videos, at least that I did yesterday. Then they would make sure the fire is going in the right direction, that everything was cool, and then they would go to the next section, and they would carefully do the next section. Then they would wait it out to see if everything was cool, and they moved on. And then they had patrol come back and forth to monitor the situation. But the wind was just what they wanted last night, and it actually blew the fire to the south, to, you know, away from Almanor West and Prattville and the tiny neighborhood of Almanor up there, which consists of like 4 streets, mind you. But that it went away down to the south towards this wilderness. This is wilderness. This is Belgium. This is land that can go. There's nothing particularly historic in this area. I scanned it on old maps and such, and I've never just heard of anything. A lot of people have snowmobiling trails in this area in the winter, and that's about it. So let's turn back on the fire activity. Don't worry for this region right now. One of my rules is don't worry for a region until you have reason to be. They just did everything they could for it. Awesome. Okay, we can move on to the next thing. They'll probably be going along this way, the Humbug/Humboldt Road, and this is going to be their defense of Chester. Hopefully, they don't have to fall back on 89 and 36, but that's a possibility depending on what the heck happens tomorrow with the weather. So looking back, at the chat, go ahead. It's open questions and answer time. It's myth busting time. It's I've watched, so you guys didn't have to, some hours of updates and looked at maps, and I can distill for you pretty much what was being said. It was hard to understand. I had to stop, pause, rewind, and do that again and again because they just so quickly ran through their information using terms that the public generally isn't familiar with. So, that's unfortunate that they don't stop to explain it. You know, they don't stop to explain. We have blackline here and firing operations. You know what that translation is? We lit this hillside on purpose to make a scorched earth line here so that when the real fire comes to it, it stops. I think that's a good summary. It's a protective scorched earth defensive line that they made with fire to fight the fire. And if they would explain stuff to the public in that manner, I think the public would be a lot less distressed right now. So let's see. I'm looking back at Twitter, and I got a link from Josh. Thank you. I'm going to open that. Catherine, can you read Max's question about the winds on Sunday? Oh, okay. Questions. The CAL FIRE Friday night briefing at 7 p.m. Need that on Sunday winds will shift and become coming from the north and east, blowing to the west and the south with dry lightning, and it sounds scary. Yes, it's pretty scary. They said that on Sunday. Yeah, sorry, I read that wrong. The CAL FIRE briefing said that. We'll look at windy in just a second and look at, where these storms are coming from. On my phone, I can go ahead and read the forecast for Greenville. If you have an Android phone, there's an app called NOAA Weather, NOAA, NOAA Weather. There's a bunch of them named that, but the one that you want is by Pandemonium Software. That is the best one that I have found so far as alerts. It's just straight up the government forecast, not some private company trying to do, opinionated, interesting weather with crazy models. This is the government. So I'm going to go to Greenville's forecast and just read about that right now. So tonight, there's going to be 59 degrees as a low. Current conditions are 61. Areas of smoke mostly clear with a low of 59. West wind 3 to 5 miles an hour. So Sunday, the critical day now of hellish weather that's coming on in here. Areas of smoke, high of 93. Sunny, calm wind becoming southwest, 5 to 8 miles in the afternoon. So becoming southwest means a southwest wind means it's blowing north to northeast. Okay, it means the wind's coming from the southwest, not blowing to the southwest. And if I click on that, we've got some more information. I don't even see a special weather statement. So the government has not issued a special weather statement for Greenville. But we do know that based on a community meeting, that the hot air, the desert air is coming and drying stuff out. That's why we've had these crazy 100-degree temperatures during the day. It's hot, dry air from the Great Basin that's coming in. And I'll get off CalTOPO's map in a second to kind of show that. And the potential for lightning is any time that a storm enters the area. Dry lightning doesn't mean that there's no moisture. The moisture actually destabilizes the area, and it makes the winds and where the fire is going to go unpredictable. That's what destabilizing means. It just means who knows what's going to happen. Now, the lightning can occur because the moisture coming in into that smoke area does some things in the atmosphere where all you and I, the layperson, have to know is that it can charge up the place and a lightning strike can happen. And dry doesn't mean no moisture. It means that there's not enough moisture to immediately rain out a lightning strike fire. That's the brass tacks of it. In most situations, when lightning causes a fire, it will burn up a meadow and create a meadow, and then the own storm that caused the lightning rains it out. That's typically what happens in many situations. But if considering the drought, considering that the area has been baking for weeks, that everything is on extreme fuel, extreme dryness, and that there's extreme fuel buildup on the ground. Lots and lots of pine needles and little trees and brush and bushes that are all dry as tinder. Whenever lightning strikes, it would have to be a torrential downpour to rain itself out. So that is the bad news. We're not going to get a torrential downpour. When I say torrential downpour, I mean tropical storm stuff. This fuel is too dang dry for a little bit of spit, for some drops, of rain to even make a difference. So that's what that means, the dry lightning. So I don't even see that on the NOAA forecast on the app, but we'll go to InstaWeb for more details on it. It doesn't mean that the person's forecast was wrong. It is, just that there's no super special weather statement to read. So for Sunday night, areas of smoke, partly cloudy, low around 62. This is Greenville. West-southwest winds 6 to 11 miles an hour, becoming light and variable after midnight. Monday, 89 degrees is the high. Areas of smoke before 11 a.m. Partly sunny with a high near 89. Calm wind becoming west, 5 to 8 miles in the afternoon. And Monday night is going to be a low of 61 with mostly cloudy. West-southwest winds, meaning blowing north to the northeast, 6 to 11 miles an hour, becoming light. South-south winds after southwest winds after midnight. So Tuesday, 20% chance of showers and thunderstorms. Yeah, this is Greenville's forecast. So we can't really have any sort of accuracy going all the way to Tuesday right now, but we'll take a look at Windy and see what we can see right now. Now, does anybody have questions in chat? I'm going to look back at it for a second here. Let's see here. Oh, if you want to get my attention like bugs, anybody, do @Catherine Davidson, put the @ symbol and then type your question. It highlights it yellow and then I can read it. Otherwise, I sometimes assume you guys are talking amongst yourselves. Open question and answer time, about the fire right now. The links in my description of my video down at the bottom are to pretty much everything that you need to know. The Caltrans road closures information, the evacuation maps. If you're just tuning in, this is the Plumas and Butte County maps. They're urging everybody to please get out of Susanville and that area. There are some holdouts, and they will complicate efforts if they stay there. For the most part, people at Butte Meadows have cooperated, and that is technically over in Tehama County, I believe. believe, or next to it. So this is the secondary map that they released for evacuation orders and watches for Tehama County, and the link is in the description. Let's go all the way down to the description of this video, and at the very bottom it says Dixie Fire, and I've got tons of links for you there. So the sheriff is admittedly overwhelmed. They said, we admit we've been overwhelmed, and that's part of the communication delays and getting things out to the public. This is kind of unprecedented, but they did call in other units, so you don't have to worry too much about crime and looters and such. Police and law enforcement from other counties are coming in to help patrol everything. I mean, it's don't stay to protect your property, please. There's enough personnel here to protect the situation. They're not. It's not a lack of personnel thing. If they can't save something, it's because the weather is too bad. That means you can't save something either. I'm going to say that again. They've got enough personnel. They have backup units. They have reserves. If they can't save something like a property or a building or historical asset, it's because they can't save it because of the weather. That it would be too much for them. They would overwhelm the professionals. The many professionals here with the latest state-of-the-art stuff here in air support. So think of this as a war. If you're a guerrilla, like volunteer militia, like if this is the Revolutionary War, and you're grabbing Grandpappy's rifle off the hearth, and you're going to help out the revolutionaries against them redcoats, this is not appropriate. If the people with the artillery and the main army can't defend something, you're not going to be able to either with your light arms. Does that make sense? If they can't, imagine a Revolutionary War with airstrike power. If they can't save something, you can't either with the limited power that you have. I want to put that as frankly as I can. If you just remain, you're just going to perhaps even get your own place burned down, because they'll stop manning the city wall, so to speak, to go help you out of your house. And that's when the enemy comes over the wall. So let them do their job by getting out. You are helping by getting out. Going back to the chat, Jake says fight fire with fire really does have a great meaning when you think about it with the black line. Absolutely. I mean, it's a technique that's worked for 10,000 years. That's why human beings still do it. People think that the Indians of this area just fled in terror because they didn't have any firefighting capability and they couldn't understand the weather. And you know what? They're pretty dang expert about things. If they saw fires, they responded in the same way. They taught white man what the heck to do in this situation. Where do you think we learned these tricks? They were managing North America pretty dang well. They understood things like looking at the sky, and they could make a weather forecast based on the type of clouds in the sky. Little feathery ones at the top of the sky usually mean moisture's coming in and it might snow. Bubbles on the underside of thunderstorm clouds mean that there's a great potential for cyclonic action and the spawning of tornadoes. There's a lot of things that the Indians knew, and so they did this for thousands of years, probably about 10 to 12,000 years before the pioneers did. So they wouldn't run helplessly. They'd assess the situation and they'd respond according to whatever their elders said to do. So this is routine. It's not desperate. It's just an effective tool. They pulled it out of their toolbox, and I'm glad that they're using it. Okay, let's go back to my agenda. I had more things to say before I got off tonight. So the forecast is, quote, dire, because Sunday storms are bringing moisture, and that's instability. So there's a big question mark. What exactly is going to go on? Tonight is a critical night where they're using the last, calm night of winds to utilize this opportunity to light those backfires, to light those fires on purpose to stop the fire. And it'll be part of their strategy to protect the Chester area, to go along this area to light more of these. So don't worry, especially if it's on Humbug/Humboldt roads. Those are the areas they said they were going to do it. They're doing a different strategy over here called anchor and flank to protect places like Jonesville and Butte Meadows. And it was much more fierce of a battle than they anticipated over the last several days, thus the evacuation. It's not because they think these places are going to burn up. It's precautionary, and it's smart. They have an anchor here, which is a safe spot, and they're trying to go on each side of it. Don't ask me where it is. I don't know. each side of it to attack from both sides. And that during the day, that's airplanes. During the night, that's dozer lines and going out there with picks and shovels and, spraying hoses and such on roads and cutting down trees that are dead and that sort of thing. So by night, what they do is different. And if they feel like they are confident they can light a backfire, they'll light a fire in a straight line ahead of the main fire to create that scorched earth black line of defense. That's defensive. Now, they can't. Now, what happens if people don't evacuate Jonesville and Butte Meadows? They have to drop this awesome work that they're doing and go help those people get out. Or save their bacon, save their asses, so to speak. You don't want them dropping what they're doing. It's critical they remain there. So that's why they tell people get out. So just in case things get fierce, we don't have to worry about you back there. We can stay here on the walls, defend the city, so to speak. So going back to chat, it's open questions and answers times. Anybody, if you've heard a rumor, let me either address that or tell you what's really going on. I watched the many videos of updates from the experts today, and it was abysmal. Like a lot was said and very little was understood, is my assessment of that. On a scale of 1 to 10, the communication, if 10 is great and crystal clear, this is a 2. And not really because they were doing anything wrong per se, but you're fighting technical difficulties, everything from the microphones getting feedback to people not having volumes loud enough to, the experts doing their thing, which is say, hi, I'm an expert like a surgeon and I do surgery this way, but not giving the public layman terms. They were using very specific firefighting terms the public doesn't understand, and they were not summarizing it in the ways that we can. So I can summarize for you. Is there anything you didn't understand? I'll just explain it. So Sean says a lot of structures were lost today. Yeah, there was a big flare-up near Paxton, and firefighters had to leave. They got overwhelmed and had to leave. I don't know anything more than that. They're still fighting it. And today, I'm going to show you the scary video. The scary video of the camera being overwhelmed at Indian Ridge, which is at the southwest tip of Indian Valley. So this is not clickbait. This is where I got my screenshot from. This happened here. This is the Indian Valley cam, and it swiveled around and ignored this, like where it was pointing at the time. But the fire came up this ridge towards it. So I'm going to use the big map to show you. So there's the fire. This is a bit more clear. There's Quincy, and this is the little valley Quincy is in. And so this is the ridge line where the camera is, and this is Indian Valley up here, where Greenville, Crescent Mills, and Taylorsville is. So all the green here, basically think of it as rugged mountain peaks and canyons. Everywhere that the yellow line is, these highways, they're just in these narrow canyons. And that helps you understand the topography. So here, up in these tall mountains up here, this is Indian Ridge. This is where the camera is located. It usually looks south, and it was seeing the fire off in the distance. Sometimes it swivels this way, and you could see this part here is the Twain spot, which I'm going to give it a name because it doesn't have a name. But this was the spot fire that jumped their line and got north of Highway 70, the Feather River Canyon Highway here. And it got out of control. And it seems to have probably merged with the fire by now. But this chunk is the Twain spot. And here was where the fire began, away from it, separate and independent of it down here. Now the camera was stationed up here on the ridge, looking south, and this is what it caught today. I'm sorry it goes so fast. I'm going to go back to the beginning. But you're going to see how this little camera lived through apocalypse. And the fact that it survived, it's a beacon of hope. It's like the flag still being there in the Star-Spangled Banner. Check it out. So looking down here, this was 11 o'clock in the morning. Now it's 11:30. Now it's noon. There's a lot of smoke. Now it's 12:30. And Now it's 1, and this is how fast the time lapse is going. Now it's 2 p.m., and the fire hits. Look at this craziness. The fire overwhelms the ridge and keeps marching on towards Taylorsville, towards Indian Valley. And you can see, and I'm just going to let it go, then I'll stop it, and I'll freeze frame it and explain what's going on. But you could see the camera just switch positions, and there's this god-awful apocalyptic-looking scene at the end, where the trees burn from top to bottom, for the most part, with all branches completely burned up in most of the trees in view. So it's quite intense. That just shows you how dang dry the trees are. That's unusual. Usually what happens is the tops of the trees stay green, even though the fire will climb up and like, if you think of a tree like halfway up being its waist and the top of its head being the very top, usually trees burn up to the waistline. The lower branches and stuff are dead, and then they're green at the top. And when you see something like just black charcoal sticks of trees, you know that that's extreme drought and that's extreme dryness, because usually living trees won't burn completely off like that. Now, the fire moved quickly past. So you don't see the trunks burning. That's because the trunks are full of green sap and water because the tree was alive. Therefore, the tree's now dead. But it's going to take a long time for the trunks, these standing trunks, to dry out and be vulnerable to having that portion burn. So that is what I can't educate the public enough about, is as bad as this looks right now, in a year, in 2 years, after more vegetation builds up at the base, after more things, flowers and stuff bloom, the worst fire will be the next time around. Because that's when all the trunks of the trees are completely bone dry. They'll have a couple of years to dry out, and they will burn. See how they're not really burning right now? The ground stuff burned off, the sticks and leaves burned off, but the trunks are not. It's because they're still green right now. The tree's in the process of dying. But in 2 years from now, if these trees are not removed, if they're not at least put on the ground, you have the secondary fires are worse than the first. So there's a race against time. Anytime fire has gone, for people to get rid of the standing dead trees. Otherwise, you have a repeat fire that's worse than the first one. So after the devastation of Paradise and all that happened, by the time the Bear Fire and such came around in 2020, which was about 1 year after Paradise, we knew that we were in for repeat fires that would be worse. But they were salvage logging day in, day out, ever since Paradise happened, and they're still not even done with that incident. So the fact that so many other fires are happening gives us a gloomy forecast for fire in the region in the years going forward. Because we know, in a way, that's positive that we can understand that. We know that the subsequent fires in the next couple of years will be worse. We can turn that into a positive. We can take that knowledge and instead of burying our heads in the sand and doing nothing, fire crews in the state and officials, they can decide to preemptively strike and build new fire lines anticipating the new fires of the future. And they'll learn from how this fire behaved here, and they'll be able to put in control lines in places that they have to man in the future rather than they have to build. I mean, whenever the initial fire goes by, they have to start making control lines. But if some are already in place, like they can anticipate the new fire and put some in before the fires happen, then all they have to do is man their stations, and it becomes much easier to fight fires. So while there's extreme negatives here, there's also really good positives. And so I need to give people a balanced view of the situation. You know, yeah, it's bad, but it doesn't have to be disaster, apocalyptically bad in the future, because we can take steps to prevent it. It's going to come down to money and intelligent people planning and intelligent people getting their way instead of politicians. That's all I have to say. Your vote matters. So this is the same cam. I'm going to look back at chat here. This is open questions and answer time. If anybody has any questions, I every once in a while do look at chat. And Max Smith, our neighborhood was threatened with a line of fire, 1,000 feet line. wide but in light fuels. 20 of us had shovels and threw dirt on the embers crossing the road. Yeah, Max Smith told us yesterday, last time I was streaming, that he and the neighborhood saved his neighborhood before. That's risky, and that's what you should do if a new fire shows up on your doorstep. It doesn't mean you should stay at your home and try to defend it from a megafire coming your way. What he's talking about was a brand new fire that showed up on his doorstep, and instead of running around like panicking chickens, they got out the shovels and the fire extinguishers and the hoses, and they beat out the embers. So that was a cool story he told the other day. Looking at chat, the new normal is a lie. Look up the Big Burn and why the U.S. Forest Service started wildland firefighting in the 30s. New normal is a lie. Basically, it's an oversimplification. It's not. It's a half truth. So we have to look to worse firefighters and worse fires in general in the future. Well, yeah, that's a half truth, and a half truth is a full lie. That's one of those things. Because the rest of that truth is, but, you know, just because the fire, the conditions of the West get hotter and drier in general, doesn't mean that fires are going to be worse. Or that there's going to be more of them than usual. One specific corporation, Pacific Gas and Electric, started most of the fires that have devastated California, the ones that erased towns and took lives. The Pacific Gas and Electric, according to New York Times and Wall Street Journal and others, started more than 1,400 fires just with its faulty power lines, poor maintenance, breaking the law, letting trees lean up against their lines. You know, the law says you have to replace power poles, the high tension lines every 35 years completely. And the one that started the Paradise Fire, they found it was original equipment, 94 years old. So just how much corruption there and lack of regulation and oversight. You know, that's what caused most of these deadly fires, the ones that are billion-dollar disasters with FEMA response and such. When Pacific Gas and Electric or another power company starts a fire, then that means that there's fewer resources at the time to put out the seasonal lightning strike fires of the summer. You know, California's used to dealing with those. It's not used to dealing with this corporate greed action here, where they break the law and keep the power running in red flag conditions and 90-mile-an-hour winds. You know, they're legally obligated to shut it off, but they didn't, and so we got the Zog fire last year, for example, and many others. There's a huge list of the fires that they caused. So what happened at the Tamarack fire is the dumb media is saying, the ones who are uninformed, I don't mean to call all news reporters dumb or anything, but they dumbed it down, and they said, oh, it's because of climate change and stuff. Well, the Tamarack fire was just a normal lightning strike fire. And even with climate change, it was very small for many, many weeks, you know, for over a week, actually. And the problem is that could have been extinguished immediately, knowing that the forecast was going to get worse. However, PG&E, the power company, started this fire up here. It started the Dixie fire. And what did they do? They took thousands of personnel and all the aircraft, and they threw it at the Dixie fire. Now, the Tamarack fire would have been out before it affected anybody if this Dixie fire didn't happen, because they could have thrown the resources at it. That's what's happening in the West, is these power companies are starting so many fires that they can't man the lightning strike fires. The biggest fire ever of California was a lightning strike complex. And they were out here, once again, last year, responding to other things like the Zog fire, and it got bigger and bigger. It's that kind of a thing that has nothing to do with global warming. It has everything to do with corruption. If you think about global warming, it is going to affect fires, of course. No duh. I mean, you have big droughts, you have dry stuff, no kidding. But global warming is not an ignition source. So you're not going to get more fires than you do normally. It's just that the ones that do happen will be a little bit more intense. That's all that means. It doesn't mean that they're going to get bigger than normal, and it doesn't mean that that's a new normal. The new normal we're experiencing here is these corporations getting away with murder, literally, and burning town after town, and because they only get hand slaps and $10,000 fines and limited liability, they don't actually have an incentive to shut off the power, because they can't make money when they're not bill people for power they're not providing. They basically have an incentive to gamble with people's lives. It's a windstorm, but we'll keep it on because our shareholders don't want to see our stock go down. If there isn't a fire, then oh gosh, sigh of relief. We could still bill people for the power provided, and what are the odds that fire will happen? Let's just keep the power going. Because if there is a fire, FEMA comes in and pays for it. They have limited liability and pay out to the actual victims because the governor and others signed a bill to limit their liability. So if they could get their asses sued off and shut down for starting megafires and burning towns and killing elderly people by the dozen and trapped in their trailers, like most of the victims have been elderly so far, and some of them have been children. If they actually could get their asses sued for the actual damages that they cause, if they could be sued for $1 billion, that's how much it's going to cost to clean up paradise, they would have the incentive to shut down their rickety power lines during extreme wind events, and this wouldn't be happening. But they don't have that incentive, and that's law. So no, it's not the new normal that we have to get used to and everybody throw back their vodka. It's not that at all. It's that's the way it's going to be unless we change the law. Imagine that there were no power company fires. So between 2014 and 2017, there were about 1,400 started by power companies, mostly pg&e. Imagine if those didn't happen. They could respond to all the lightning strike fires when they're really small, all the ones that cigarettes and campfires unextinguished start. They could respond when it's really small. They would have the enough personnel, and not be stretched too thin, and these megafires just wouldn't occur. They'd be extremely rare. This is what's actually going on. So going back to questions and answer time and what's going on with this in Plumas County is I'm going to show you what happened to this camera. One last analogy. So if you think about fires starting in somebody's kitchen, what the new normal actually would mean. What does global warming actually mean? Think about a person that takes their mail in every day in their newspaper, and they foolishly put it on their stove. They put paper material on their stove. Okay, so the paper material represents stuff that can burn, like the forest and such, right? The drier trees, the drier foliage. Now, if you have a drought and global warming, then put more paper than usual on the stove, like you're getting 2 newspapers instead of 1, right? So that if somebody turns the stove burner on, that's when a fire happens. It can only happen if there's an ignition source, right? Even if you're foolishly storing paper material on your stove, there is no fire unless there's an ignition source, right? So what global warming does is like having more paper on the stove, that when it finally is turned on, when circumstance means the stove burner gets turned on, the fire is a bit more intense than usual. But it's not an ignition source. I hope people understand that. We don't have extra ignition sources because of global warming. We just have more dry fuels because of global warming. And ironically, these fires are causing global warming more so than they are a product of it. They're the ones releasing the CO2. Look at all this crap. Look, how much CO2 do you think is being released when these smoke columns are reaching New York City? The Statue of Liberty is barely visible because this fire's smoke is going to New York City. Just how much CO2 is that? Just how much are we going to lose for these trees that are dead that should be converting the CO2 into oxygen? There's a double whammy here of forest fires being mega contributors to global warming. So that is the full truth there, that it's a lot less dire than the general public believes. We don't have to sit there and throw back our vodka and go, oh God, it's the new normal, there's nothing to be done about it. There's a whole lot to be done about it. We can help stop the extra contribution that we're doing as humans to global warming by stopping these megafires. So the left and the right is invested in stopping them, and we should work together. If you're participating in blaming one side or the other, you're absolutely in the wrong, and you are We won't stop this stuff. We won't change laws. We won't see change unless we band together to fight the higher powers that are corrupt and making money off of disasters like this. We have to change laws. And we have to be on the same side and quit tearing each other apart. That's why I don't allow it here. That's not going to do anything. When anybody who's a politician points at the left or the right and starts screaming and yelling about blaming them, you need to vote that person out because they're not taking responsibility. They're not doing anything that will help this situation. And if you want a situation that's bad to get better, the rule number one is don't do anything to make it worse. And we're in a race against time. There's very few forests now that haven't burned yet. So we have to act right now, come together right now, demand change right now, and there's all sorts of good things that we can do. We can limit the spread of these fires in the future with better management, precautionary, making fire lines before fires occur, making defensive plans for cities and towns, making, instead of mass evacuations, perhaps a new idea of having evacuation shelters near where people live, like little bunkers and such, so that people don't die as often trying to flee their town after it's overwhelmed. There's a lot to be done here that we can help the situation. Now, going back to the chat, let's see here. Oh, MMC says a cigarette butt in a drier climate could start a fire that might not otherwise start in cooler weather. That's a very good point. But that cigarette butt's the ignition source. Global warming isn't. See, every fire has an ignition source, right? So it means that fires that can be started get worse. So there's not any spontaneous combustion out here because of global warming. Okay, it's not spontaneous. There's always an ignition source. But that is accurate. California typically is extremely dry, where any cigarette butt tossed out the window in summer is going to start a fire, dude. I mean, that statement is a lot more accurate for a place like, say, Oregon or something, where it's kind of misty and stuff. But in summer, if you threw a cigarette butt out of any window in California and it hit any sort of vegetation, you're basically guaranteed to start a fire. California doesn't see much rain, period. California gets its water from snowmelt. There's very little rain that actually occurs. So, I mean, that's really, your statement is accurate for other states, not California. That's what we're talking about right here. So we're at a place where if you're pulled over to the side of the road and there's dry grass at it, you just almost at certain months of the summer, it's considered completely stupid and irresponsible to pull over next to dry grass because your car engine is hot enough to light dry grass. But mostly the people who live here are pretty, they know about this stuff, and the locals are a bit more fire educated than others in these wildernesses out here. People did potentially start a fire. I think that was confirmed that it was a vehicle. I can't remember if it was the Salt or the other fire up by Shasta. There's somebody who was passing through on I-5 and they pulled over and they lit the grass with their car engine. So that's kind of, but if things were a little bit more moist, maybe the cigarette wouldn't start one. Oh, dude, it would. Trust me, a cigarette would start one anytime during the summer in California. Okay, going back to the chat. Not necessarily along the north coast. Yeah, that's a good point there about Humboldt County. I think you're talking about. That's about the only place in California that gets rain. But guess what? How dang small that is compared to the rest of the country. Let's zoom out and I'll show you Humboldt County. There are what? How many counties are there? Are there 32? Humboldt County is just right there. It's got some pretty unique geography right there with the misty redwoods. Just like there's unique geography in southern Oregon right here, where this spot right here is a lot warmer and almost never sees snow, even though there's some mountains and such, because it's a mini microclimate right there. And so, yeah, you did correct me there along the north coast, because there is that's one of my sayings, is there's always an exception to the rule. But if you look at the size of California, that's one tiny, tiny exception. And that place has seen fires too. But that's generally as soggy as you can get. That is like the coast of Oregon up there. It's a unique microclimate. And they're trying to turn it into its own state. Didn't they want that to be the state of Jefferson? There was a secession movement that was pretty interesting. Now going back to the chat, the Tubbs scar. Okay, Sean Carter was talking about the Tubbs. I live in the Tubbs fire scar, and they wanted to cut lines, but they rejected the idea because it would take work. Yeah, they're doing a horrible cold analysis when they're thinking, should we bury the lines underground? They'll do this cold calculation, just like if you've ever studied the horrible Ford Pinto. Oh man, we designed this car that when it's ever rear-ended, even in a light accident, the fuel line disconnects from the gas tank. It dumps fuel all over the place, and it keeps burning up families alive in their cars. We could issue a recall, and it would cost X. But if we just let people die, we calculate the amount of people that might die. Let's count the beans, and let's just compare it. How expensive is the recall versus paying out the insurance claims to the dead victims' families? It is the same cold analysis that's going on with these power companies. They have insurance. It doesn't really affect them and their bottom line unless too many people will die. And so they do this cost-benefit analysis, and many times they think, well, we'll keep the dangerous lines up in this place where we've already had fires, and we know that the high winds come through here very frequently, but we've got insurance, and we calculate that we can handle that loss. That's why I don't believe that power companies should be privately owned, in my own personal opinion. There's always going to be that cold calculation if you have shareholders. The number one thing, if you take an economics class, is what is the purpose of a corporation? It can have many goals, but the top one and the main one is to create money for the shareholders. That's it. It's to be profitable, enough for the shareholders. When we're talking publicly traded companies here, that's what it is. And everything else is a secondary thing. Now that we're in the era of megafires, where these corporations with their greed factor have been burning up much of the state, causing billion-dollar disasters, and they have year after year, time after time again, demonstrated a willingness to kill people and to hide things with cover-ups. The Aaron Brockovich movie, where they knew that they were poisoning well water and giving people cancer, and it took a lawsuit to try and get that stopped and then uncover the corruption. I mean, that was in the 70s. They've been killing people for a really long time. They've caused California's deadliest fires, period. Nobody had ever seen a kill count like 85, like at Paradise. That's where my brother nearly died. The year before, at the Cascade Fire, we lost our good family friend who did die. He burned alive in that fire. There was an article, Meet the Victims, and most of them were elderly. Elderly are the number one victims of these fires. This is why I'm so passionate about this. This is why I do this stream. I'm listening live on Scanner Radio and hearing the dispatch trying to tell people here at Paradise, will you please go, firefighters who are over here, will you please go to the west. Sorry, from here. Will you please go to the west? There are elderly people who have called their caregivers for rides. They don't have cars. They're in their elderly trailers. It's a retirement trailer park. They're calling 911. They see the flames coming, and they couldn't get there. The fire cut them off. And then we saw the mass casualty reports. These elderly people were calling 911 and calling their caregivers, and they were looking out the windows, and they were not seeing help coming. They were seeing a fire coming. Some of them ran outside to die as they tried with walkers to escape flames, being surrounded by fire. Some of them went into their homes, and they knew it was over, and they crawled in their beds. And they were incinerated to the point where only teeth and jewelry were found, kind of interspersed where the little coiled up springs in their mattresses were. This is a kill count. This is 85 people. Other people and families got trapped down here, these dead-end roads. And they drove up north, and the power lines, the rickety power lines, fell and blocked their way out, and they died burning alive in their cars. This is serious. This is what the power company did. That's 85 people. That's men, women, children, and the elderly. You know, in the Cascade Fire, that was a year before. The thing that happened a year before down here at Loma Rica, and excuse me, getting myself oriented here. Loma Rica and Bangor. That's where our friend died, burned alive in his fire. Those power lines too. The same night that happened the year before Paradise, Santa Rosa was burning down. And they got a slap on the wrist, and they got a pass from the governor and others. They were about to go bankrupt with all the claims from the victims' families, and the governor decided to sign a bill that would protect them, limit their liability, and all of a sudden their stock jumped up to mega proportions when it was down. You know, somebody profited off that because they knew what was about to be signed as legislation. You know, this is evil. The very next year, you know, had more fires that they started. The Zog, you know, that killed people. With the Zog fire, we were covering that live. I was trying to cover the ones in Napa last year, and we saw the Zog one erupt. And we had a child journalist, get on his cell phone and show the Zog fire come into his house, how he was evacuating. You know, he was awesome. And all the resources going down to fight the one at Napa, you know, they had to pull some of them off to go fight the Zog. Meanwhile, they couldn't fight some of the fires up here started by lightning. These are completely unmanned. For months at a time, they didn't have enough resources to even man those fires because they had their hands full again with the pg&e fires. Then we watched as the Bobcat fire started down in LA, and then they had to pull even more resources off to go to LA last year after the Labor Day storms up here because there's more electrical stuff causing the fire at the Bobcat fire. So the worst ones are actually caused, for the most part, by the power companies. And the lightning strike ones only got bigger because they couldn't be everywhere at once. This is the same thing happening again this year. It's 2021 now. This has been happening for a long time, for year after year after year, and I can't tell people enough what the heck's actually going on. This one was small. Oh, wait, sorry, no, the Tamarack, excuse me. The Tamarack down here was small, and they had every opportunity to just throw what they had at it to put it out, but they couldn't. This Dixie fire erupted and became a monster. The Tamarack was neglected, and then all it took was a bad wind day, and the Tamarack is now affecting 2 different states, many different communities. That's what the new normal is about. That's what the real new normal is. But, you know, it's sound bites for the media. They don't do investigations. They're not personally affected. They don't look into things. The New York Times did, and God bless them. I believe the LA Times did too, but their little voices are kind of drowned out by the whole, oh gosh, there's a drought and so fires are bad. This fire didn't need to happen. This was the exact same place the Paradise fire began. This is another electrical problem of PG&E on the same dang line that started the ones with Paradise. This is the same spot. If you throw a rock down here where it began, at Polga, that is exactly the same place that the Paradise Fire began. They're not telling the truth. They told the public they would de-energize that and completely replace it. Did they? Is history repeating itself year after year? And only action, only the people getting pissed and demanding change, excuse my language, is going to change anything. Now that we have this global warming, we can't afford it for corporations to start thousands of fires. That should be the talking point of the year here. Now that we have this drought and this global warming and these bad situations, we can't allow extra people to be making extra fires and extra corporations making extra fires. We're going to have we're going to have our hands full with the lightning and then the cigarettes and idiots and stuff. There is no capacity to fight the extra fires that the power line companies are doing. Going back to the chat. Looking back. Does anybody have any questions about what's going on in the current situation at Plumas County? I'll tell you what I don't know. Let's look and see what where the current fire is right now. Let's look at CalTopo. I'm going to do a refresh. And then I got to go at some point here during the night. Modus and veers. Every little red dot is an area where there's been heat detected from space. Now the crosshatch area here is where the fire has been, and that's just drawn on the map saying that the fire has been here. It doesn't mean that everything burned up in the center. Now if you were to zoom in it's got this crosshatch pattern because it's generalized. Just because it's penciled in with a color is just so you can see where the fire's been. It doesn't mean that everything in that area burned up. It is always natural to have some little like canyons and such where the fire, say, jumps from the ridge to the ridge with the wind and maybe leaves that canyon completely alone, or a chunk of it, or a little valley, or a little area, because the wind blows it away and it just doesn't go that way. So there are pockets in here of unburned areas. I don't know how many. With the incredibly dry fuels, probably not that many, unfortunately. But the first thing is to not get depressed when you just see where has the fire been. The second thing is don't get depressed because these are just heat detections from space in a generalized area. You can't zoom in and say, oh, my house. It's basically like a nipple on a baby bottle. The very tip is where the little dot is, and like around the nipple on the bottle, at the top of the bottle, is the margin of error. If you look at the nipple here, so the margin of error is all around it in that ring. So it just means somewhere in this ring there is a heat detection from space. You can't pinpoint anything. It's not pinpoint accuracy, not at all. So some smaller fires cannot be detected. These generally have to be an acre to an acre in size. And also, last thing to say about that is there's false alarms sometimes where a power line, say, could overheat, and that could show a detection. And then they could press buttons at a control room and shut it down, and it'll cool off, and it's not really a fire, right? Foundries, places where they melt metal, like really hot places like that. Like they could be in the middle of your town, middle of Oakland or something, like aluminum recycling, and it's not a fire. So the other thing to say about this is that the fires that are supposed to happen show up just alongside the ones that are wild. So here is the containment line to protect Almanor. And if you don't know that they made that backfiring line on purpose, you're going to be scared and cry and weep like a lot of people are on social media, thinking that the fire jumped lines and it's over here and blah, blah, blah. No, this is a defensive fire. This is a wall to protect Almanor. You're going to see throughout the night, if we monitored it throughout the night, that they'll extend it along here in this way. And maybe they've even been making... I imagine they've been doing a lot of work in this section right here. They don't really pinpoint exactly where, to create dozer lines that will stop it, and they'll have several lines of it. And then in between the lines, that's a great place to light one of these fires, so that when the main seat of the fire occurs and shows up, it won't have anything to burn. So that's like making lots and lots of defensive lines. So the good fires show up right next to the bad. The other thing is, you don't know if a fire was put out when it's a spot fire. So you can see stuff like this. You see these right here. It went on the other side of the canyon here by Caribou. We don't know if that was lit by the firefighters on purpose because they're anticipating embers coming over here, and they had a window of opportunity with the weather. Wind wasn't too bad. Oh, let's light this, what they would call fire this on purpose, just to make sure that if the wind picks up, it won't burn out of control later. Let's burn this on purpose. We don't know if that's what happened. We don't know if an ember came over and that's what happened. Don't make assumptions. It could be good rather than a bad thing if you see something on the other side of a line or a natural barrier. Also, you can learn how to read this. This is an older detection because there's a timeline here. Red is, if you click on fire activity. Where's the key? the helpful little key isn't showing up here of how to read the fire. Maybe I have to take off. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, the historic map was in the way. You click on the fire info key. That's less than 12 hours ago is the red. Orange is 12 to 24 hours ago. So 12 to 24 hours ago, the fire was here, but now it's red back here. So that means that the wind probably changed and the fire blew back on itself, and that's a good thing to see. If you see older stuff in front of it and the fire more intensely burning at the moment behind it, then that's probably an indication that these were lit on purpose hours ago, and where it's active right now, it stopped. You would only want to be alarmed if you saw red over here. And then again, you would have to think, should I be alarmed? Could they just be putting red over here as a continuation of this strategy? Is that them doing it, or is it the fire doing it? Way I find out is I go to the experts and their sources, and if you go to InstaWeb and CAL FIRE, they'll explain what they're doing throughout the night, what their nighttime ops is going to be, and they'll try to explain best they can where they're going to be doing this stuff. And it's great when they can tell the public that ahead of time. And so they did this. They issued a tweet or a Facebook update the Plumas County Sheriff's did saying that firing operations would occur here. They unfortunately didn't tell the public what a firing operation was and what a black line was. As they said in plain English, we're going to light fires on purpose over here, folks. It's going to protect the shore. Whew, people would have breathed a sigh of relief. Instead, the rumor mill got generated, and everybody was assuming that they should cry over this over this region, especially when the journalist was mistaken, and he announced to everybody live that it's bad over here. And no, that was just a mistake. Matthew Henderson's mistake. So over here, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on at Genesee Valley. I don't know what this spot is right here. We do know that the sheriff has said over here by Taylorsville that this isn't safe and that this fire is not under control. This is the fly fire right here. And that we're getting worse weather, and that's why he said to get out. Everybody should get out. So they won't be able to tell the public all the time ahead of time what they're going to do. Sometimes if they see an opportunity, they just do it. They just get instant approval from the commander on the ground. If they have a window of a couple hours where the wind's in their favor, they will just light a fire right here, wherever it is, to try to stop the progression of the main one. So we won't always know. There's a process for getting permission to do it, and sometimes they seize the opportunity, and the next day they explain what they did. So when you're night monitoring situations like this, you can't tell from your armchair whether or not you should be alarmed. But they did say Arlington Road, which is right down here. The sheriff said it's not safe. Taylorsville's not safe. Please get out. So, if I had to guess, this might be bad news that this spot is over here. And I don't know what this was. This could have been activity of lit on purpose yesterday, because it's 12 hours old at least. I don't know what it was. They didn't explain it in the town hall meeting. We can go and check. We can go and check InstaWeb, and Josh has stayed abreast of it. The fire has burned through Indian Falls and hasn't made it to Moccasin as per a couple hours ago. The fly fire has also reached the peak of Mount Huff. Yes, okay. So we'll look at where, I think that's Huff right there, because we know that this camera was kind of stationed over there. Let's watch this again. Let's watch the fly fire take over the Indian Ridge camera. This is absolutely unbelievable. I can't believe the camera's alive. Now, as an aside, when this video stops live broadcasts, when YouTube converts it into a regular video you can watch, you can always press the gear icon and slow down the speed to 0.5 speed on any YouTube video to watch it in slow motion. And that'll help you watch this. But this is a message for people of the future after the video is archived. So this isn't too long ago, folks. This is... that's after 9. This is 10 o'clock. And it is now just 23 after midnight. So Let's refresh it, duplicate and refresh, because I don't want to lose that. It's what it looks like right now. And it's not pointing the other direction. We can go ahead and look at the East Quincy cam. Let's do a 6-hour time lapse, and it will end with current conditions. So as far as they did address what are they trying to do? Like to save structures down by Twain and places like that, Moccasin. They said they're doing what they can. That's a high priority. They weren't able to save everything, like in the Belden area, so they're still struggling in the canyon a little bit. And that's where Matthew Henderson was earlier, saying that he had to kind of flee with the firefighters. It got really intense down there. So tonight's a critical night. What can they do while the weather is at least slightly okay? Wind hasn't been that fierce. Not like it could be. I mean, we've had upper level winds affecting the column, and that affects whether or not embers can go flying around. But we haven't had nightmarish wind like we've had in other fires, but that can change. So I'm glad to see that they have taken the opportunity windows that were open to them, and that they have made this line. They've crossed the T, so to speak. And just a refresher, if wind is going north like it generally is, anytime you see fire in a straight line in front of it, like that, that's the actions of firefighters. Don't be alarmed. They're crossing the T. The wind is the up and down portion of the T. That this is the cross that they made, and it's a barrier, a protective barrier. So this fire will reach this area and hit scorched earth, and if the wind isn't too fierce, that should be a good long distance. It would be hard for the embers to travel that far unless the wind was crazy. Okay, unless we're having 45, 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. I don't believe that embers would really affect the peninsula that much. So we can just, fingers crossed, hope and pray about that. Hope that the weather remains good. All firefighting in the wild is a race against time. When is the next huge weather event that will screw everything up going to occur? Nobody knows. So when you have a wildfire, you're racing to get the containment lines in before that wind event occurs. So fingers crossed about that. Indian Falls was hit hard. Josh has some Twitter stuff for us. Yeah, let's take a look. If anybody has questions and answers, oh God. Yeah, structure loss. Yeah, this is Indian Falls on Highway 89. I don't want to stream that. I'm seeing structure loss, but I don't want to stream that because I think that anybody who doesn't know if they've lost their structure should find out first through official channels rather than people watching like my stream. This is more about education than lamentation. I do get passionate about what's happening, and I get pretty angry too every time I think about pg&e. I mean, pg&e is basically indirectly responsible for everybody's losses at the Tamarack fire because all the personnel was here. The Tamarack fire was a small lightning strike that they had to ignore for a bit to try to respond to this freak out crisis with the power lines. And it has become aware that PGE has even admitted that they delayed many precious hours in notifying CAL FIRE. They first detected there was something wrong with their lines. They knew that there was a short, and they decided not to cut the power. So this tree that was leaning against whatever it was, some circuit, was frying and frying and frying and frying and being sizzled and sizzled and sizzled. And even though it was alive and not likely to catch very well, a power line completely sizzling something and frying it for hours on end, well, what do you think is going to happen? They didn't de-energize it. Firefighters can't do a thing until lines and areas are and stations and such are de-energized. If you put water on something electrified, you're going to electrocute yourself. So they were defending their late response at some sort of a town hall meeting and all but taking responsibility. That is why Tamarack and people in Nevada are dealing with so much crap. That is why New York is being smoked out, and you can hardly see the Statue of Liberty as these smoke clouds from these two megafires that both could have been easily prevented. But no, a power company decided to be, itself and greedy. And so now we have 2 megafires that didn't have to exist. At the time, the worst time possible. At the time of the highest drought, the hottest temperature, and the fiercest effects of global warming that we've seen so far. This is what we didn't need. Everybody should be pretty pissed at PG&E right now, and pretty pissed that the governor protects them, and pretty pissed at all the corruption going on right now. I cannot tell you. Nothing will change unless these people are out and we get new blood. People who actually care about people in charge. I mean, all the king's horses and all the personnel here, they can do everything that they can. But this is a nightmare terrain in nightmare weather and nightmare climate conditions. What are they supposed to do? To stop these disasters, we have to have a quick response and no extra fires. That is just absolutely the truth. And these are preventable. And if the media isn't explaining how it's preventable, they're not doing a good job. But take it from the locals here. We all know. The people in this area, we all know. The people in other states covering the fires, they don't know. But this is insane. Let's go back to the chat. We got another Twitter link. I want to make sure, if that's something to share, I will. But I want to look back at the cams. So, just see what happened to the camera today. So, today at Indian Ridge, which is just below Crescent, just south of Crescent Mills, I believe. In general, man, it burned all the way to the treetops. Just everything burned, ground to top. That is so unusual, but mega drought, not in a mega drought. We do have some tops of trees and stuff unburned. These are going to be the healthier trees, and the different types, different species can resist fire better than others. So species matters. So does luck with the tree. Which way did the wind blow? Or other trees adjacent to it. Like these right here, growing in rocks. There's not a lot of pine needles and stuff underneath it for embers to light pine needles. If an ember lands on a tree, sometimes it doesn't do anything. But it's going to do something guaranteed if it lands in dry duff. So we do have, here's what I call a patch over here. I don't know what, a pocket of perhaps even unburned trees over here. Because what fire does is follow the wind in a finger-like pattern. And so like this strip down here is a finger. And so this is where the wind was fiercest and where the trees were densest. And it went tree to tree to tree to tree to tree here. Whereas that pocket over there could have different factors where it could have just been simply the wind kind of splitting and racing along ridge tops. That's what it tends to do. And that's why you see fingers. Fire spread looks like fingers on the map. But man, look at that. It's basically incineration. There will be no regrowth of the actual trees here because this incinerated the pine cones. This will all take replanting. This is how these megafires are different than the normal healthy ones. The normal healthy ones don't do this. You know, if we can get to a point where we carefully groom the landscape with some fire-resistant trees in the replanting and you know, making it not too thick, not too close together, and then we grid the land with pre-installed fire breaks and roads and stations, water tower, water tank stations. We'll have a lot different outcomes in the future. This is a little bit of monoculture, and this is what happened to the region. When the pioneers cut down the trees, what got replanted and regrew were the fire-promoting trees. You know, they kind of monocultured. Monocultured means there's one species pretty much growing everywhere. They lost the diversity, and if there's too many in the way of pines and firs, those are the trees that promote fires. And just dropping so many dang needles and such. But you miss out on, they don't really replant things like the cedar types, and just in general, talking about the West, not this specific climate. But, you know, what was replanted was what was valuable to lumber companies, you know, and there was not really an idea. Ecology wasn't as advanced back then, where they didn't understand the need to regrow a diversity of species. So this is a blank slate to work with on the plus side. We can regroom the landscape to make the situation better in the future. But part of this damage is artificially caused by humans' mismanagement and poor decision making 75 to 90 years ago. So here you can see that the main fire moved on, but this part probably restarted with the wind. There was something on fire by the camera, like this area. I'm not saying, you could see it in these little small areas. That stuff still smolders, and little logs and stuff are still on fire long after the main fire's gone away. So these little unburned trees and these unburned pockets are at risk. They will go up in flames, if there isn't a response. If nobody gets up here and puts out these little things here and checks the hot roots, and it's called the mop up. If nobody gets up here fast and mops up, then all it takes is wind later to fan this up, and the unburned vegetation goes up in flames. And so you see it kind of die down here, and by the end of the video, you see this, where a nighttime wind gust stirred up an ember, and now these that weren't burning are at the currently. See how they came back to life? If you carefully look at this, little by little, then yep, see the little spots, like the little logs and stuff on fire, the little areas, because this wasn't mopped up. It's reactivated during the nighttime winds. So firefighting is hard. They can't be everywhere at once. And it's sad that when a little area first doesn't burn at first, then it later will. But that's the nature of the beast. So let's go back to chat here and look at this cam. This is by Quincy. Let's see if it updates. This current conditions looking north at that fire. And we can see how it's moving over here. So that means it's going straight for Taylorsville in a nutshell. We can look at windy and the weather too. I keep forgetting about that. Let me go back to chat. So bootleg needed to be logged and thinned and stuff. Well, almost every part of the West needs to be analyzed for some sort of a treatment, so that we just lost the Opal Creek Wilderness, one of the last bits of old growth forest in the Cascades, and Jawbone Flats, the perfectly preserved gold mining ghost town, the historical thing. And we had some fatalities in it, the Beachy Creek fire, and that just proved once and for all that you can't have a roadless wilderness. That's a terrible idea, because the Beachy Creek fire was just like the Tamarack, a very small lightning strike fire. And like I said, it's a race against time to put that out before the next wind event. And the wind event of the century occurred last year. It only happens about every 75 years. And boy, did we hit the jackpot with 2020. The entire old growth forest was lost. It's now a bunch of sticks, dead sticks that look like this. And it was pristine old growth. But some extremists think that roads shouldn't be anywhere. And they think wrongly that roads mean a place will be developed, and so they were in their mind fighting development, but in reality they were fighting firefighters, who would want to save their old growth forest. You can have laws that protect an area from development. That's what laws are going to do. But you have to have fire access roads, put gates on them so the public can't use it, hand the keys to the firefighters. But they could have put out in an afternoon that lightning strike fire. Instead, it burned and burned and burned and just sat there doing nothing until wind picked up, and all of a sudden it's killing people and trapping 75 people at the Detroit Lake. It destroyed many towns. It destroys Jawbone Flats, Detroit Lake, Mill City, Lyons. It affected Staten and Sublimity and Gates, and a couple of the small ones like Imnaha. Just erased them. Essentially erased them in a day. And so now we don't have the old growth and we don't have the towns. And so what was the point? What was the point exactly of saving it? Just to lose it in a day. That's the state of the West. That's why I'm urging people, we have to take action before we lose any more irreplaceable treasures and lives. And that's what the stream is about. I can educate you about maps, I can educate you about fire behavior, I can tell you how to survive a fire. The best place is to take shelter if you're surrounded by flames, and I can give you all that kind of advice. And none of it matters if we keep having these megafires. Eventually we'll lose pretty much everything. If you look at the state, and you click the button for fire history. This is recent fire history. A whole lot of the state now is penciled in. That's a desert, so that doesn't matter. There's no forest to burn down there. But look, just how much of the forest we got left. I mean, this was one fire just last year. We have to take action immediately. Left and the right side have to come together because our goals are the same. Prevent this crap. Stop arguing and bickering and blaming. We both are to blame. All of us are for tolerating the situation and sleeping at the wheel. We didn't understand what was going on, but we do now. So ultimately, we only have ourselves to blame, but that means that we are the solution. That we can change. We can change the situation. Taking responsibility means you can change it, and we're not victims. We were foolish. We made mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes. But we have to stop this because it's going to accelerate global warming, accelerate the problem, cause more emissions, cause more pollution, cause more deaths, and everybody who makes their living off the forest too is not going to have a job. So that's why the left and the right are really not at conflict here. Sanity's in the center. We can come together to find solutions. We can just thin forests instead of clear cut them, and that's just a very good one of the many solutions here. So and new technology. We can invest money in new technology because technology is what is helping us anticipate fire behavior, what they'll do. If we can predict it, then holy mackerel, will that change everything. But right now we don't know how to predict things. Now, if anybody has questions and answers right now, I want to wrap this up because does anybody have actual questions like what's going on where? I want to look at the InstaWeb and read you the outlook for tomorrow regarding the Dixie Fire. I'm sorry this has been kind of Dixie Fire exclusive. The last thing I have to tell you about the Tamarack is there is now a map for lost structures of the Tamarack Fire. And I can link you guys to it, but I don't want to stream it because it's new. And I don't want people to find out through my stream whether or not their house is standing unless they ask me. So that's what I did when I first began streaming with the Paradise Fire. When that happened, I was just a citizen and went live, and I was tracking fires this way. I basically learned it with my study of history. You can layer historic maps on top of new ones and find locations of historic places. Then I go photograph them, and you can track fires this way as well. And so I decided to show people during the Paradise Fire aftermath, as they were still fighting it because it went on for weeks. People came in my channel and said, "Is my place still standing, or what's the odds of it still standing?" So I could give them the information as best I could. And when the structure map came out, I showed them that, and it made me feel pretty good to be able to show people your structure is 100% okay, or at least end their anxiety about things. Now the structure map, Plumas County Sheriff's has said we're not able to do that yet, even though we do know what structures are lost already. We don't have the fancy map that usually comes eventually with fires, and it'll be a map like this, but you'll see green, black and red individual houses that represent buildings, and then it will say percentage of damage, such as 100% gone or 30% damaged, and it'll have addresses and such. So I want to link it. The one for Tamarack is in the making already. It's ready for the public, but I don't want to show it because they should find out first. The homeowners and such should find out first. Now the Tamarack, they didn't have that many structures lost yet. So let me get over to it on my other monitor, and I will put it up in a second in the link in the chat. I'm not going to show you guys as I explained. So let me go to Tamarack structure loss map. Okay. So it's Alpine County. So alpinecountyca.gov is where you're going to find this map. And now the link is in chat. Okay, that's the person's name in chat. Says, thank you. My mom's home is in Crescent Mills. Yeah, they don't have the Plumas County one yet. They don't know. They know, but they're not sharing with the public yet because they don't have enough time. Their hands are full trying to deal with the situation at the sheriff's office, but they're keeping a list, and you can call, to find out things potentially. I wouldn't overwhelm them with that. Just kind of wait it out. But Plumas County will have, and Butte, I guess, will have their own structure loss maps that do come out. And if you click in the chat, you'll see how it goes with the Tamarack one, and it'll basically be identical. And eventually that'll probably be something I broadcast too. But I want to be sensitive. It's terrible to be watching some sort of a social media thing and then see your house gone and recognize that's your porch and your yard. It's devastating. It's better that the sheriff's office gives you a call. And then you can kind of be prepared, and then you can see images if you want to. I always want to remain sensitive and not at all make anybody feel bad. This is a supportive community that we've groomed here. We have excellent moderators in chat and excellent participators in chat. We've kicked out all the bad people and all the people unhelpful to the situation. We have to come together with this. We don't allow disunity because part of the reason all these fires are happening is disunity. Divided we fall. And if we just blame each other and point fingers rather than take proactive steps, we're going to see this disaster continue. But if we come together and just do these practical steps, like if there's 35 reasons for these fires, one of them is global warming, which is a long-term thing to fight. Well, let's stop the other 34 reasons. And then if we do that, if we stop all the artificial fires happening, the ones that don't need to, with the power companies and things like that going on, then we can prepare and adapt better to what climate change has in store for us. We have to adapt to it. It's not going to be fixed overnight, and that's the best thing that we can do. It's like I think I see the left and the right as an arguing couple that's married. If you want to stay together, because it's critical, like everything's going to fall apart, stop the blame game. Just say, okay, whatever happened before, whatever. How can we come together and fix stuff? And that's it. And it's give and take, compromise, and it's sanity in the center. Most people are not extremists. Just stop listening to them. So the sooner we stop giving a microphone to extremists, the better on each side. Both of them are making the situation worse. Just get educated and fund technology and fund firefighting, and recognize the status quo is not what's helping. Status quo needs to change. Throw it out the window. So everything we were doing wrong, just throw it out the window without blame game and start fresh. We do have a bright future to look forward to because all of these disasters are teaching us incredible lessons. And keep the blame game out of it. Just say, A, B, C, and D went wrong. F is the solution. Let's implement F. Let's do that. That's it. That's the way we got to think about things. So looking at Bugs Bunny has a White House briefing thing. Yeah. I'll take a look at it and stop seeing D's and R's in front of people's names. Like if they've got good solutions, who cares if they're on the other side? What is that famous quote? It was from a video game, but it was quoting a philosopher, I believe. Pragmatism will succeed where ideology has failed. We got to adopt that. Yep, so there's a fact sheet about the administration's acts to addressing the wildfire threat. I'll read that later. Right now we got to get through this situation. So last call for questions and answers sessions. Heather says, we need to stand up together, voice our opinions, and allow top officials know what loss impact this has on everyone. and that we need to get along. Absolutely. This is not the time for bickering. This is the time of the action movie where two men are in a swamp fighting to the death in a little boat, and they're punching each other, and one of them gets the upper hand and starts strangling the other one, and then they realize they're surrounded by crocodiles who are bumping the boat, trying to eat them both. All of a sudden, they're allies, and they both pick up they each get an oar in their hand, and they start beating at the crocodiles because they realize they're both going to die if they don't team up and work together. That is the situation here. We're in the same boat, and that's what that phrase means. So let's stop choking each other and pick up the paddles and start moving the boat somewhere. We can't paddle in different directions. We have to go into experiment mode where we try new things that are different, and we go back to the past and we dust off the techniques of the past that have been working and did work before these fires began. And so it's going to take history, people with historic perspective, and that's one of the things that I can bring to the table. I bring historical perspective. I know what's worked historically and what hasn't. I study disasters and what creates ghost towns, so I have a very good grasp of what happens to destroy communities in the West, with a somewhat unique perspective on that. I'm not an expert, but I give very valuable information because you don't have to be to understand fire and know what to do, what actions to take. You just know what the experts want you to know. I go dark. I go to dark places and try to study fatalities. Why did every individual die on this map from this specific fire event? And I did that. I've done that for Paradise and other places. And then I interview survivors and say, how did you live? And we just go with what works. We know what works and what doesn't. All I do is I don't make up information. I don't say, oh, I think this will work. I'll give the public advice. I'm passing on the information experts want you to know. And I want to be corrected if I ever make a mistake. And the resident firefighters that come in this channel, they do help out with that. So far, the only times I've been incorrect is when I've underestimated what fire can do. I've underestimated how far fire can spread due to wind and burning embers and such. And that's a really sobering thing. I will never start talking out of my rear and say, oh, I think X is going on, or this is what's going on. I'll always say, I don't know, and we'll find out together. I know about fire behavior, but I'm pretty ignorant about how it's actually fought, like in the field. I haven't done that. That wasn't my career. And I'm absolutely enthusiastic about learning, because I think that the more we, the public, learn, the more that everything is going to get better. A lot of anxiety and fear and the wrong decisions happen because people are uninformed, and they don't need sugarcoating. They don't need to be treated like a baby. They don't need to be in the dark. They need to be given just the straight dope. This is what is the situation, and here are your options. And here's the best option, and that's what the experts are telling you are the best options. My slogans here are evacuate before you're told to. And if you become fire educated enough and look at these resources like these maps and such, you're going to know when you should go before you're told. And so that's what the purpose of the channel is. And this is going to save lives. The more people that know things. If you're trying to figure out, am I extra vulnerable? It's not because a map tells you are. They paint with a broad brush. Just because this sector up here is yellow and it's a warning, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't get out immediately. And you'll know if you know a few simple things, such as have an A, B, and C plan, and then a D. You just have 4 plans for if the S hits the fan for evacuation. So A, B, and C are your 3 different roads that are main roads out in 3 different directions. So if you are here, sorry, this is highlighted, you've got 3 main roads in 3 different directions. So you could relax here at this point where my mouse is, more so than you could at any other point. because no matter which direction the fire is coming from, you probably have 2 alternative routes out, right? You also have a lake, which is a great shelter-in-place spot. A, B, and C are your 3 main roads out in 3 different directions, and D is your shelter-in-place plan. Shelter in a safe space. You know, not your home. Your home is one of the worst places to be. But you should consider what's around my home. Ponds, swimming pools, creeks, bridges, culverts, golf courses, dirt fields that are recently plowed or something with no tall trees around them. Is it schoolyards with green grass, track and fields? These places where you can just drive your car there and just sit in it and wait it out. Big box store parking lots. Do you have those places to shelter in place? That would be a better place to calmly proceed to and ride out the firestorm, because driving through flames is the worst choice possible in all situations. That is the worst choice. That is where most people die, is in their cars, just like in a hurricane. Those people in fires die in their cars. They fail to realize that evacuation is a window of opportunity that closes. If you see flames in the distance, you should probably consider your window of opportunity is closed. If you see flames coming up over a ridge, do not drive like a bat out of hell unsafely and assume that you can be driving somewhere and that you'll be fine. You should go to your plan D, which is your nearby shelter place. And it's pretty easy. Culverts, things underground, culverts and bridges are oftentimes your best options, depending on their size. And then, like I said, it could be the Walmart parking lot, the big box store parking lot, the school yard. Drive up onto a golf course, drive to that place nearby that's a construction site, but they haven't really done anything, and there's just a bare acreage. Go out onto the docks on the lake. Take your wool blanket with you and throw it over your head and sit in the shallow part of a pond where you can trap breathable air underneath your wool blanket, and you won't get a second sunburn type thing on your nose. And when you crawl out of the water, you'll have a wool blanket to keep you warm. It's that would be a better option than driving through flames. If your neighbor has a big swimming pool and fire's coming up the street, don't drive through a wall of flames. Get in the pool. It's what you should do is go around and see where within walking distance are your best places to evacuate and calmly proceed to if you can't go out by car anymore. If you have those A, B, C, and D plans, trust me, you need to have these done before the fire comes. You're not going to be able to remember anything or your phone number. You're not going to remember my voice and my advice or anything like that. But if you had them already in your head, you'll just go do what you had planned. Just implement what you've done before and practice it. Drive around your neighborhood and take notes about where a good fire safety zone is. You can use these maps, put it on the satellite mode, and be like, I wonder if over here, there's or over here at the end of my driveway or whatever, there's something to take shelter. It looks like this road goes over a creek at this point. Let's just take this as an example. See this? Bear Creek. Let's just say this is anywhere in the country. You could drive and see if that's a culvert. Is it big enough for a person to get underneath it? If so, if you saw flames anywhere at the end of this road or before it, your best way to survive would be to stop the car where that creek and culvert is and get up under there. That's a hell of a lot better than proceeding down the road and doing what most people do, get trapped. Fire will throw down trees and power lines and block the road in front of you. And if you back up your car and come back going for that creek or the place that was safe or another road, odds are fire has blocked your way from the rear. So if you get stuck out somewhere like this that doesn't have the creeks, you are probably going to be a victim. But if you had stayed next to the shelter, recognizing the danger of most people die like this, getting trapped on the road with the place that isn't sheltered because they left too late or the fire came too quick, you'll keep a cool head. Just take notes as you're driving. Where are the creeks? Where are the bridges? Stay by those and calmly proceed to get out of the vehicle and get under them and just weather it out. The Part D plan, I in the past said that it was a last resort plan to have your shelter in place, but in reality, it's not your last resort. It's the best thing to do if a fire starts very close to you, because you never know when a lightning can strike your neighbor's tree. Like say it just lights up the whole neighborhood, or some crazy event happens where you're now like, where can I take shelter within walking distance? Don't grab the garden hose and defend your house. If it's really fierce, you need to go take a shelter like that. So as you drive around your own neighborhood, in your own cabins, in your own areas, what I want you to do is take the satellite maps, flip it on over into a stack a base layer, and go to global imagery, or on Google Maps, go ahead and look. And just identify, hey, I think this road, wherever you are, I think this road crosses a creek here. I'm going to take a mental note of that, get in my car right now, and go verify that. And so when the time comes, when the S hits the fan, and there's very poor visibility, and everybody else is driving like a bat out of hell and past you and getting in wrecks ahead of you and such like that, you'll know that only a tiny little reflector is what you need to look out for, where you see that culvert or bridge is underneath the highway. And you'll stop your car, and everybody else will go, good luck to them, but you will have gone to the shelter that you verified was there. Some of these can be really big and really deep and really wet. And so this is what we learned with the places like Berry Creek, Brush Creek last year, the Bear Fire. A lot of the victims, unfortunately, they drove past many little bridges and culverts and even the reservoir, where they could have just gotten in the shallows and waited it out, throwing a wool blanket over their head, wetting it down, and riding it out. So have your A, B, C, and D plan. And always evacuate when you're told to, but consider evacuating before you are. And like I said, the way that you know that you should evacuate sooner than anybody else, let's go back to the actual evacuation maps, excuse me, I'm clicking around, is consider your vulnerability. Like, what if you are at a higher elevation and there's a dirt road, and to get to any highway, you gotta wind your way down the dirt road? That is time lost that you don't have in a crisis. So if you are at the end of a dead end road, look out. If you are B, there's only one road that leads to one highway out, and the one highway could become closed. You're also ultra vulnerable. C, are you weighed down by anything such as gathering pets or dealing with people with mobility issues, your family? Are there children? Are there neighbors that you would want to gather up to? Other things that would slow you down. That's a factor as well. If do you not have a car? Situations like that can leave you ultra vulnerable. Or do you not have a very reliable car? If you identify yourself as ultra vulnerable, or is the place where you're at completely devoid of ponds and bridges and culverts, just like it was at Paradise on the plateau, where there's not even a sewer to get in? If there's no shelter within walking distance or even a mile around you, you're ultra vulnerable. That means you should elevate yourself one notch above what the others are telling you. So if you're in the watch zone, but any of these things apply to you, does it take a while to get to your main highway? Is that main highway clogged by traffic typically? Is it a high population zone? Is everybody else waiting to be told to get out? Well, that's a recipe for a traffic jam and panic. Okay, you should elevate yourself to the go now, rather than the wait and see and be ready. Those are the main vulnerabilities. So if you do that, that is the best thing that can happen for not only you, but the outcome of the fire itself. If whenever the S hits the fan, they have to go door to door to make sure people are out. If you're already out and you left that sign in your window or on your door saying out, they can go help somebody else. You're not part of the traffic jam mess. If they just know that everybody's left on the end of the street, whatever, that saves them so much. They can go and fight the fire and stop worrying about the people. So, yeah, exactly. This is going to make you calm. Having these plans is not going to make you scared. It's going to make you calm in the crisis. Panic only happens when people don't know what to do. That's your subconscious mind pressing buttons for adrenaline and run and stuff. But if you've ever noticed that firefighters and first responders calmly walk towards crisis, it's because they've been trained and they know what to do. And they just do what they've done before, no matter what's occurring. They just go fall back on their training. So don't just make the plan, do a drill. A couple times a year, whenever you feel like it, time yourself. Put that little stopwatch on your cell phone and say, okay, this is my fire drill. I made my plans. Now, how long does it actually take me to gather up my medicine and stuff in a bag and some food, a jug of water, a flashlight, and my kids and my dog or whatever? And how much time does it take me to get over to the car to let some air out of the tires? Because you don't want full tires in a fire. You want to let some air out so that the tires can expand. Okay, how long does it take me to do that? Then you look back at the phone. You'll be surprised. It's like, wow, 27 minutes went by? That's not good enough. Let's start this again and see what I can do to make this out of my house in less than 5 minutes. Okay, click it. Click that stopwatch thing again, and you'll get better each time. So that's your fire drill. And then you should start the clock from when you leave and go to the A, B, C, and D routes. How long does it take you to get for a pretty far distance away from your house? Go ahead and time yourself. And just do this a few times. And then verify, oh, what if a fire was in front of me at this point? Just think about that every time you're making a turn, coming around a bend. What if I come around a bend and the fire was in front of me? What were the best places on the road behind me to have taken shelter? Rewind things, go back and drive again, and refer to the overhead satellite maps. Like, oh, the satellite shows a pond over here, but can I reach it? Is there a gate? Is the pond dry right now? Does it still exist? Does this dirt field still exist, or was it developed? Look with the satellite maps at your local fire department. Sometimes they have ponds behind their actual fire stations. And unfortunately, with the Berry Creek and Brush Creek disaster, people drove right past them. They could have turned right and hung out with the firefighters and by their ponds and gotten inside them if necessary. But in general, firefighters can defend their own firehouse because they have a water source, and they'll wet it down, and you can hang out with them. It's just depends on what is the best situation here. But I always tell people, you do obey evacuation orders and leave early if you're at all in a vulnerable situation. And most of all, for God's sake, check on your neighbors. Identify the elderly and the vulnerable who may not have any idea that a fire is even around. You wouldn't believe how many people in the Paradise Fire who were elderly, who had bad TV reception areas and no cable and didn't have cell phones. They had no idea the Paradise Fire even happened because they were like in little pockets and canyons and down the dead-end roads and such. And citizen journalists showed up to cover the fires and knocked on this one guy's house, and he goes, "What fire?" Because they didn't have radio reception back in his little area, and none of his neighbors called to tell him or knocked on his door to tell him anything was wrong. He didn't know why his phone was dead. He just thought it was a lack of service. And what had happened was the Paradise Fire had chewed through all the phone lines, and thus the reverse 911 system never activated. So don't assume that all your neighbors are out, and tell them, get in the car. I'm leaving right now. Come with me. Occasionally, elderly people will refuse to leave, and you should just pick them up and throw them over your shoulder. That's up to you. But nobody is going to put a kidnapping charge on you if the fire is actually coming and that elderly person has dementia or something, or refuses for some reason, and they just don't know what the heck's going on. If you can, just get them in the car with you and go. You're never going to forgive yourself if you don't. I was in that kind of a situation before where I was in a group of people evacuating during a flood, and there was an elderly woman who refused. She goes, "Oh, I'm a Holocaust survivor. I can survive anything." And the big guys in the car could have just taken her, sat her down in the seat, and we could have taken her with us, and they didn't. And just the entire drive, it was, oh my God, we should go back, we should go back, we should go back. And they couldn't sleep, and they bit their fingernails off with regret. And they're like, why did we do that? I'm so ashamed that I did that. And, you got to use your own best judgment. It's really got to be that the fire's like coming down the street, in that kind of situation. If they have a firearm or something, you shouldn't start something. You shouldn't like try to harm them in any way. But if it's a little old lady or something, just has no idea, consider bringing them. And you're not going to be arrested for kidnapping. It's going to be a situational thing. They're going to come back and cry and see their own house burned down and thank you for saving them. That's what it's going to be. You don't know what's going on sometimes. But if you can't get them to go, then you got to go tell the sheriff. You got to tell somebody, go back after these people. They didn't evacuate. You got to pick up that phone. You can't. You are your brother's keeper in this situation. In a crisis where there's a disaster, it's the humanity, what your burden is as a human being is different than what the laws are. So I'm going to go back to the chat. Teach the plan to your kids, the ABCD plans, absolutely, and don't keep your kids in the dark. You think you're sheltering them from something? Kids are pretty dang smart. They can tell by your body language, the tense, the stuff, something's going on. You can't hide from kids. My parents could never hide a damn thing from me, and the fact that they tried made me want to tear my hair out in frustration with them. It made me angry with them. It made me not want to listen to them, because when you know your parents are lying, then what the hell can you trust them about anything else? You have to maintain that trust if you want your kids to be safe and obey you. And you have to tell them what's the straight dope about what's going on. But the thing is that you could tell them, hey, this is a big disaster. It's a big, scary world. However, adults deal with it this way. We find out as much information as we can, and we obey the authorities. And then when the authorities have got their hands full, we make our own decisions about what is the safest course of action, and then we calmly do it. And that's the way grown-ups help a situation. We never give in to panic. We never give in to fear. We just fall back on the tried and true methods of what works in a disaster. We have these plans, and no matter what happens, we got a plan for that. We're prepared. And then what you should do, kids, is know that we've prepared for everything the best we can, and that's when we relax and we just wait. Because once you've done everything you can do, that's all you can do. And that's when you should stop worrying. Because whatever's going to be is going to be. And then you can focus on having some family time or whatever. And this is what puts kids' minds at ease. They want to know that there's a plan. They want to know somebody's in charge. They want to know that even though there's a scary situation, that grown-ups know what to do. And they want to know about the situation so they know what to do too. And they can be your little helpers. And you want to have them as little helpers instead of overwhelmed, crying, burdens, because if they start freaking out, that's not good, and it's not good for them either. They'll develop an anxiety disorder or something. They should be told what's up. Kids are extremely resilient, and they can be told really dire stuff, and you'll be amazed by their strength. It'll shine through, and they'll mature for having gone through a difficult situation. You're going to be teaching them maturity, and you just exemplify it. You just show them this is what we do. So let's go back. We got an update here. Josh says fire looks active over Indian Ridge and the Indian Falls. Yeah, it is. We can look at cameras again. Let's go ahead and duplicate, and then I'm going to get off here. Keep saying that. But this is the current view from Indian Ridge, and it's showing southeast. I wish it would swing around towards Indian Valley, which is probably full of smoke right now. So let's look at we can't see into Indian Valley. I wish there was another cam. We can look at this one by Canyon Dam, but all we can see is like what's happening on the ridge lines from Quincy. We can look from Dyer Mountain. This one tends to have a very dirty lens. Let's go do our 12-hour time lapse. But this doesn't exactly look into Indian Valley either. It would be on the extreme left side. And look at that visibility. I can see why they avoided it with the airplanes today. There's nothing to do with that. You fly into that, you're just dead. Heather says, we all have people that panic during emergencies. Give them a job and a task. You're so right. That is the best. That is very good input, Heather. You're going to be the calm in the storm when you have your plan. You're going to marvel at yourself like, wow, I'm not panicking at all. I know what to do. And you're going to see the people running around panicking. Your neighbors are going to come out and be looking left and right and hyperventilating. And you're going to be able to say, you're going to be letting the air out of your tires. You're finalizing your packing. And you're saying, guys, get in your cars and follow me right now. And where we're going is this place. This is safe. And the next place that we have on our list is this place. So, if we arrive and it's not good, we can backtrack to this place, and this place, because there's culverts and there's bridges. And even dropping a few names like, just, I don't know, Bob's Crossing is a safe bridge to be under, or Red Berry Road has a golf course. Now, these are safe places to go. They may not really, when people are panicking, it's hard for them to understand anything. But these familiar terms, these familiar places and places you're dropping, is going to be what they remember and what they go and do. So you really can help your neighborhood and your situation by being calm and having the plan. And better yet is you have a map, and you show people on the map what's up. And if you give people a task, they will not panic either, just as Heather was saying. So if you say, hey, dude, Charlie, we need 3 jugs of water. Can you go get them? And he'll just go get them, And Mary Lou, you do quilting. Do you have any wool blankets? We'll need 1 for each person. Can you grab those real quick? And then you say, Frank, or Jamal or whoever, is your neighbor. You got that Forest Service map, come get that. And then we're all going to caravan. We're meeting back here in 4 minutes. Everybody go, And everybody let 5 pounds of air out of your tires real quick, or I'll do that for you, but go get these things. And then follow me, and if we separate, here's where we reconvene. Did anybody check on the so-and-so old lady? You go get her. If she refuses, pick her up and take her. Whatever you've got to do if somebody's unaware of the situation. And then you go. And somebody will, one of the kids, what they can do is listen to the emergency alert system, be in charge of the radio and listening. They can be in charge of something, right? And so the kids won't panic either because they got a duty. And if they say anything about anything new, tell me, and then the kid can say, look, there's just a new evacuation order, or such and such road is closed. Give them something technological to do, and if they're good with the cell phone, tell them to get on a mapping software and try to figure out the road closures. Like, get on Waze and plug in these destinations, and does it say that any of these roads are closed? Get on a different app. Whatever they can do, and even if you don't need that information, tell them you need that information. Make them feel important. Make them feel like they contributed. So that's a real good piece of input. The Sprague friends had no idea until I called them the first day, and I said, you're level 2, get ready. Wow. Yeah, do not assume that people are following the news. There's a lot of people that have rustic cabins, and they go to them to escape the world. Drive up to them if they're not answering their phone, or you're not sure they're in town or whatever, and just go ahead. You're a police officer's daughter? Oh, awesome. Yeah, so you know about this stuff. There you go. Check on your neighbors. And if there's, in the case of a structure fire, another thing I have to tell people is pull the dang fire alarm. If a building might be on fire, and even if people are asleep. And this is the thing, even if people are asleep, go ahead and try to wake them up. When people are sleeping is mostly how they become victims is the fire spreads too much and they were sleeping through the beginning of the start of the crisis, right? So like if you're even in an apartment block or something like that, you're like, I don't know if I should pull this handle because it might make people up. If you really do smell smoke or that you have a feeling the building is on fire, you do it. In general, people are not pissed. They are, even if it turns out to be not that big of a deal or it's put out quickly, they're grateful. So just get over that shyness. Get over the my neighbor might be mad at me thing. Who cares? It's a situation. I'm so glad that I ignored that feeling in me that says I shouldn't disturb people in the middle of the night, because that's how I rescued a fire victim myself. You know, I heard a smoke alarm. It was like in the middle of the night, and I couldn't see any sort of indication of fire. I just heard it throughout the neighborhood, and I couldn't smell anything. But I decided to walk around and identify what the heck house was that smoke alarm in, and knock on the door and see what the heck's going on. Because a lot of times the smoke alarm may be going off, but somebody's already incapacitated by smoke, or they don't hear it. They're hard of hearing. My hearing aids are not in. That kind of situation, where the back bedroom smoke alarm's going off, and you hear it because the window's open, but they can't hear it in the front room with the TV on, right? So that was the scenario. I could hear it. Person inside was inside. And I am so happy that I went to verify and woke up the neighborhood. Whatever you have to do to wake up the neighborhood, there's pots and pans, you know, like if somebody's house is on fire and you can't like get up to there, and you've already called 911, but the neighborhood doesn't know yet, and maybe somebody has a ladder, or maybe somebody could help get a victim out, or maybe somebody could figure out if anybody's home. Then what you should do is you take your pots and pans and a spoon, and you should bang it all up and down the neighborhood and scream at the top of your lungs. People ignore car alarms and stuff, but they don't ignore somebody screaming at the top of their lungs, banging pots and pans, and whatever you're going to do. Make sure somebody inside is alert, because even though the front of their entire house or their garage may be completely engulfed, people could be fast asleep in the back bedrooms because they took their sleeping pills. You never know. Josh, has there been any new evacuation orders? That's a good thing to check before signing off. So the way that we're going to find out is mostly through the Plumas County, their website, and the actual Twitter and the Facebook for it. So let's go ahead and check. I'm on my other monitor. Let's see here. Sorry, I have millions of tabs open. So Plumas County Office of the Sheriff, I am refreshing. This is their Facebook, and I'll look at Plumas County's website too. 1 hour ago, please see the evening's update. Oh, sorry. That was a link to the video on CAL FIRE that was 6 hours ago. So 6 hours ago was this forest order regarding national forest closures, which is not new. I'm going to check out their Twitter to make sure. Plumas National Forest Twitter and Fly Fire. So clicking on that. That's the InsaWeb. And checking out Dixie Fire information. Here we go. Nope, there is nothing on the official Plumas County website. The Chandler Road, I already described that at the very start of the video. So to double verify that, I also don't see anything on Facebook. We should refresh the maps, see if they look different. Not seeing a whole lot of difference here. I'm going to refresh the one for Tehama County. Not seeing anything particularly different there. And yeah, this was what we were checking. And this is Quick Map. At the beginning of the video, I explained how people can find out road closures going here. And that is updated by Caltrans. You go to quickmap.dot.ca.gov, click on options here in the quick map, click everything, and then all of a sudden you can see which roads and such are closed. You can even see Caltrans maps. The one here has been down for quite some time here at the Y, But I was seeing that it was sunny, pointed towards Greenhorn yesterday. That blew my mind because the smoke was going towards New York City. It was taking off for Nevada. So let me double verify other information too. Yeah, I did see animals. I saw deer grazing in front of the cameras last night. I saw a herd of deer grazing with the fire in the background of the Indian Ridge thing. It was kind of horrible. They weren't running. They were just feeding and doing their normal stuff. So let's look at CalTopo again and do a refresh and see if we have new hotspot information. It's going to be every couple of hours that this usually updates. If we want to look at information that is much more live, we go and switch to GO's live satellites, but it's much less accurate. So every chunk, every block means there's a heat detection somewhere within that huge area. And this is such a huge area, it could be entire mountains, like the upper stories of mountains, entire towns. So like right now, we've got, as of 10 minutes ago, a big red heat detection here. So that's 10 minutes ago, right by Susanville in the hills. Or sorry, Taylorsville in the hills. And just the yellow here is somewhere between 1 and 6 hours ago. All right, smack dab on the town of Taylorsville itself. But that could be up in the hills instead of the town. You see how wide of a swath this is. This is up-to-date information. It's not pinpoint accuracy by any sense of the mean. So if you look at the fire info map, the GOES satellite key is stuff that read is less than 10 minutes ago. And orange is less than an hour ago. But you have to also translate UTC time and make sure that that was, that's from the moment that this time is right here. So let's go look at UTC time. 8:20 UTC time in Pacific. That's Universal Coordinated Time. It's 1:20 in the morning, so this is accurate. This is 5 minutes ago because it's now 1:26 in the morning. So once you verify that, you can know where the fires in general are burning. But like I said, we have no idea if that fire is part of the wildfire and it has reached Taylorsville. We have no idea if it's them lighting a backfire on purpose, doing firing operations. We just know that there's enough heat to be detected from space all over this area. And this is the mountains on the west side of Indian Valley. So the fires in these mountains, we know that. But what is typically done in firefighting to protect a town that is on the flatlands next to a bigger fire coming this way is they go along the base of the mountains at a time when the wind is blowing favorably in general or just not much at all, and fire goes up hills. So to protect Taylorsville, one of the things they might attempt is to go a little bit above the town and light the fires, because they'll go up the hill and create the black line. That's the scorched earth, so that when the main fire gets over here, it stops at it. What they might do, this is 100% speculation, is they might want to make it go all the way back to here, burn all the way up to the ridge tops, up to here, because if the fire stops here, then if fierce winds pick up, there'd be much less in the way of embers to fall in the town to light it up. That's typically done when you have a flatland town with mountains and such near it. They'll also perhaps even go to the other side and make a black line here if they think they can control it. That's the one big caveat. If they think they can control it, And light the other side on fire if they are worried about embers jumping that gap. I'm not saying this is a plan. I'm just telling you, like, what can you do to save a town? That is very, very typical. We saw it last year, the Bratton Fire to save Paisley, and they'll go along these highways that go along the sides of the mountainsides, and they'll use the highway as a line and start lighting the fires, like, making them go up the hillsides and burning that stuff off so that they don't deal with horrifying situations. If the main fire were to go here with none of that stuff burned off, then they wouldn't be able to do it little bit at a time and at their leisure. They will be reacting to what the fire is doing rather than being proactive. And everybody knows in battle you don't want to be reacting to the enemy. You want to keep your forward momentum and keep the enemy where you want the enemy. So if they didn't do that, if they just allowed the fire to come up over this ridge, you would have trees at the top like breaking off and rolling all the way down, and landslides and stuff happening, and flaming material blocking the road, and they wouldn't be able to do much. It was much better to light the landscape so that the pine needles and the little bushes burn off, and that will save these big trees. As burning debris goes down and like rolls onto the trees, there's nothing around the trees to burn, and they have a much better chance of like making it. And anything that is vulnerable already, they will have fired it up on their own terms, not doing reactive stuff. So, like, say there was a leaning tree over the road here, and they light the backfire, and now it's on fire and stuff. Well, in the calm of the night, they can let it fall on the road, cut it up, move it, and it's not a big deal because they're ready for it, right? But in the middle of the windstorm and the fierce, chaos, whatever is predicted, that's not the time to do these operations. It's time to do it in the cool of the night and on their terms, and when they know that what the weather's going to do. So last night and tonight are the two critical nights for defending all of these towns right now. If I had to guess, you might see those kind of operations. They hinted that it was on the table. So I would not be particularly too concerned if I saw a bunch of this, well, what we just saw. This doesn't bother me. We've been doing this now. I've been doing this now for a couple of years and talking to real firefighters and learning about behavior. This doesn't bother me. We know what the plan was, that they have a lot of options on the table. They've been implementing it over the past several days. They don't have a manpower shortage. They have reserves. So I don't expect town loss, knock on wood, at least not tonight. I do expect loss from the outbuilding type places, the places that are just, like in the windier sections and canyons, and the places where it takes them a while to respond, because they'll have spotter planes and whatnot. They'll have calls from people that didn't leave, or they'll be looking with binoculars from a ridge, and then they'll see something. They'll say, hey, there's a smoke over there, and it'll take a while for an engine to come up and respond to see if they could save a structure over there, and it'll just be luck. Does the engine arrive on time? Is an engine that close to that spot fire available right now? If the answer is no, then that might cause the structure loss. And that's why you can't predict everything. They can't put a fire engine at everybody's house, but as far as towns are concerned, they will be prepared, and they will have staging areas, and they will have plans for the defense of each town, and then they'll implement it as the situation demands. So we knew that the wind was blowing this way. They said everybody get out of Taylorsville and Greenville and stuff yesterday for a reason, because they're anticipating tonight. And the fly fire just made everything worse. And this is what I expected to see, and this is what we do see. Let me go back to fire activity. This is what the situation is right now. We have hot spots detected from space in a huge swath of area. This is the entire western half of Plumas County. This is the eastern half sliver of Tehama County. We got Lassen County over there. We got Sierra County off here in the distance that could be affected. We have Butte County down here in the canyon. So this is a huge swath, a big part of California. That lake is huge, by the way. It's gigantic. If you were to take a boat, like a speedboat, and go from one end to the other, that's going to take you hours and hours and hours. Start at dawn, you'll be here by dusk, because I don't mean speeding, like, I mean, this is a choppy lake, so you'd be going like 20 miles an hour at best, but it would take you a hell of a long time to get from one end to the other. Um, Everywhere around here, it takes forever to drive. It's just long, windy roads and steep canyons everywhere. And you just think you're getting somewhere and think you're getting somewhere. There's just more and more and more road out ahead of you. And you see, wow, it's been 2 hours. And I haven't really gone very far. But there's a lot of personnel up here. And this is just a huge mega fire at this point. It entered mega fire status days ago. Anything that blows up more than 60,000 acres in like a 24-hour period is a major mega fire. We know that they're battling it on several fronts. This one I'm the most happy about. This one is they've already taken action to burn the landscape here at Belgium to keep it away from, Eleanor, the West Shore. I'm the most happy about that. We do see that over here, these detections are probably them also continuing the line over to protect Chester up there. Division Hotel, they've been struggling with this over here to save Jonesville and Butte Meadows, but they have an anchor point and they're doing a valiant fight to keep it from pushing over that way. This is a wilderness, cattle mostly. Not too many historic structures to be in danger or whatnot. And I think, we can just pray that their efforts are good. That's an anchor and flank effort. They got lots of dozer crews. They tried hitting it with aircraft before. And so that's a really hard fight over at Hotel. Down here at Bucks Lake, there's good news because they're explaining that their dozer lines were going very well. And this red here could be the moving fire, and it could be that, like, hey, we're done with dozer lines. Let's light the hilltop on fire to do more of the firing operations. We don't know, but they were very good on that one. The more places of concern, the most concern was the Twain spot fire. Was never contained, and it's now just a big forward-moving chunk ahead of the fire that's over here, threatening the Twain and Indian Falls and all those areas. Over here, the fly fire moved west over the ridges past Quincy to the east, and it's now threatening Taylorsville and pretty much everything in Indian Valley. And it will be a battle to keep it in here and not in the valley and not crossing the valley. This would be a serious problem if the embers drifted across and got into here, or this is called the Moonlight area, and over here is the, what is that butte called again? I can't remember. We could zoom in. What is that mountain? Kettle Rock. Okay, so went over to the Kettle Rock area. That's nightmarish terrain. There's a lot of historic gold rush assets to lose. There's a lot of, they barely saved those during the Moonlight Fire of 06, I believe it was. Same thing with this canyon here, Seneca. The ghost town of Seneca is there. Gold mining town. The Caribou Power Plant. There's a lot of historic assets in there in critical danger. But they've been protecting Seneca for more than a century, ringing it and protecting it. So let's just fingers crossed that they can do that once again. This entire region over here has many, many, many historic and even currently active gold mines, old ghost towns, historic places, graves, Indian graves, pioneer graves, even current ones. Lots of people's cabins, lots of recreational facilities, and lots of animal preserves, habitat. Would be absolutely disastrous if they can't stop it at Indian Valley. It'll be a screaming nightmare if it gets over to the Moonlight or up here, because it doesn't look like it, but these peaks over here are 3,000 feet higher than here in the valley. I can't tell you how hard it would be to get crews up there. They may just write that entire region off as a loss and try to just if the embers got over here and tried to save a couple historic assets, a couple towns where they'd let the fire surround them and blow past them. But for the most part, we'd have massive losses up here. And this place was just starting to recover from the Moonlight Fire of 06. This is inaccessible, steep terrain. There's very few roads that still exist up here. Even on the maps, you may see these roads. Half of these don't really exist. They've been grown over. There's been landslides. They were there in the 30s and 40s when the mines shut down, and they're not maintained. I drove up here, and you would be shocked how many roads don't actually exist anymore. If you are going to drive from the valley, like Indian Valley, and get up here, like roads like this, sometimes they look straight on the map, but in reality they're a switchback that goes left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, all the way up. I can tell you that's not like a straight line type thing. Left, right, left, right, left, right. And this takes you more than an hour just to climb that 3,000 feet. It could take you 2 hours just to get down from the valley up here. So if they needed rapid response via trucks, that would be one hell of a nightmare. There's no such thing as rapid response. It would be like, okay, we arrived, time to go. It's too big. It's going to be critical that they keep it out of here. So with the dire forecasts of the winter coming in with instability, a little bit of moisture, but potentially new lightning strikes, this is one heck of a battle that's going to be waged over the next 24 to 48 hours. But I have high hopes that this line's going to hold for Chester. Chester might be evacuated anyway. They've been warning as much. This over here is a fierce battle at Hotel. They're still dealing with the stuff in the canyon. This fly fire has complicated everything. Let's go back to the traditional outlining here. This is some of the steepest terrain and inaccessible terrain in the nation. I mean, Plumas National Forest is big and empty and wild. I cannot tell you, it's wild. A lot of people disappear out here hiking and stuff, and you just find them a year or two later or something, or maybe they're closed. A lot of people never are found. It's just absolutely rugged and very slow. It's very slow to move anywhere up there. Like I said, on the Catherine scale of, let's look at terrain. On the Catherine scale of 1 through 6, bad, very bad, very, very bad, extremely bad, nightmarish, and then apocalyptic. The terrain here is nightmarish to apocalyptic to work with. So, outlook. I'm not saying that apocalyptic is the outlook, but for a lot of the landscape, it'll look like an apocalypse has happened, because this will be a containment game, not a save the area inside game. Just like the others in the region, it was just to keep it from getting worse, but everything inside is basically lost. And it'll be luck, it'll be wind, if pockets of green and such survive. The only thing that'll be saved is what they ring protectively, like maybe the ghost town of Seneca, and where people do live, actually. When we say ghost towns, we say, well, there's no town, a place like has a store, it's a historic ghost town that some people like. They think it's cool to live there, but it's more like there's a few cabins, you know what I'm saying? It is not a town like Greenville or Taylorsville. They'll ring the ghost towns they can protectively. They'll leave a few engines there. They'll set up they'll wet everything down, let the fire pass them. But as far as the landscape goes and trees and stuff, just everything is luck. What survives is pocket of green in here. This is a nightmarish scenario, and I don't see any new things to report at this moment. Looking back at chat, relative humidity is 20 to 30% at night. Yeah, that's not too much recovery. Oh, Torin, are you in the chat? Torin, hi. Sorry, I did not see you. I have neglected chat so much. Yeah, there's been no new info after 10. Thanks, Josh. And that's been my experience too. We have to remedy this. I'm taking notes about what goes wrong during these fires so that I can write that 35-point plan to preventing and minimizing the damage of megafires in the future. So there's a lot to be learned here historically. One of which is there should be one app and one website for information where everybody goes to find out everything they need for every fire in one place, and that's it. It's just like the confusion. Every county used to have 3 separate phone numbers for emergencies: fire, police, and medical, right? And so visitors didn't know what phone numbers to call if somebody, cut their arm off with a saw. They would just pick up the phone and not know who to call. Maybe dial an operator or something, and then they decided, why don't we just have 911? Wow, did that simplify things? That simplified things. So instead of having a million social media things here, I mean, they're using it, and I commend their ability. Why don't we have one-stop shopping for all information? That's what we need. So I'm taking notes here until that day comes when we have simplification and a streamlined kind of a response. They're doing what they can. They're forced, these sheriffs and stuff, which should be responding to stuff. They instead have to get on 5 social media platforms and update people. That's just wasting their time. So we will have to wait for the updates, and they're scheduled as such. 7 a.m. CAL FIRE gives its update. Sometime around noonish, they sometimes give an afternoon update. At 7 p.m. they do an update, and you can get to it via Zoom or Facebook. You could just friend, or whatever, follow CAL FIRE on Facebook. The Butte County one is the one that's the most useful right now. Look in the links of my video for the description, and you're going to see all the information that you need from those links. And I'm going to look at chat that I neglected. Torin, you just got here. Cool. I need to turn on the timestamps and see when people were talking. That was at 1:28 a.m. Yeah, sorry, that was like more than 10 minutes ago. The NWS stations report light winds trending west. If you look at Fort Sage, Constantia, and North Portola cams, the smoke's blowing east. Yeah, it's going to be unstable. So don't imagine that the wind will either blow this way or that. As the moisture's coming in, it's going to be unstable and swirl around a little bit. So those dozer and masticators will make some awesome fire lines. Yeah, absolutely. But one of the dire, they called the situation dire, the lady that was forecasting the weather, because we're not having much relative humidity, recovery at night. And so the land's just still baking. Even if it doesn't rain, a lot of plants get their moisture back from humidity and dew and such. You can never discount the dew. Everything from fog and dew and just whatnot. It's how desert creatures survive. They lick dew off of plants. Like a lot of times camels don't drink water for epic long periods of time, but they lick dew off things. And looking back at Heather, I don't know. Heard that Power Solar was going to California. I'm not sure what that is. I wonder how many sources of spontaneous combustion there are. That typically spontaneous combustion requires moisture. That's the thing about it that's weird. It's within haystacks that get wet. Like haystacks that get wet down into their center are notorious for spontaneous combustion. But it has to be certain conditions. And Torin would be the best person to answer this as a firefighter. The hay in the center has to remain moist and hot. And so you get that moisture, and the ends of the haystack dry out, right? The edges. And the interior is still this moist core. And because it takes longer for the center to dry out. And if it gets compressed, such as in a hay bale, that's worse for the situation. And so you have a rot starting to happen in the center of the haystack. And so rotting creates heat. And so there's this low level of heat in there, and it starts to change and change and change. And then you have a situation where there's low oxygen and stuff in there, and bacterial action occurs. There's all these factors that goes into it. But then the next thing that happens is heat's introduced and wind, and then that will cause the combustion. Just like people trying to rub sticks together with friction, and you can see like the grass starting to smoke a little bit before the flame happens. Well, that's the heat of the sun or whatever beating down on that haystack again, and so heat's been introduced. Then if you have a gust of wind, then it puts air in there. And so that chemical reaction of rot and stuff has started spontaneous combustion. It is not when things are just dry. That's not spontaneous combustion. It has to be very specific circumstances. Ironically, last year, or maybe the year before, there was a hay wagon. No, it was the same year as the car fire, actually. I can't remember which that was. I think it was 2018. With a car fire near Shasta in the Redding area. A hay wagon, even though the car fire was already going by Shasta City, over to the east at I-5, a hay wagon drives, literally, truck with hay bales on the back, drives by Shasta Lake, and the wind coming off of Shasta Lake over that tall bridge over the lake hit it and ignited the hay in the back of the truck. It was an open bed truck, and all of a sudden the truck's on fire. And they were wondering, what the heck happened? Was it arson or something? All of a sudden there's this huge fire going up the hillside off of I-5, and they went, no, it's a hay wagon. But no, the landscape just doesn't get dry enough to spontaneously combust. You have to have an ignition source. Just hot and dry conditions have to be like within an oven to spontaneously combust. You could put paper in an oven up to a certain degree, and it depends on what the nature of the combustible material is. Like paper has a certain ignition point, but it's not 400 degrees outside. I can tell you that. That's spontaneous combustion. When you have flashover in a structure fire, flashover is when the room gets hot enough to ignite everything inside of the room, and that's like thousands of degrees depending on what's in the room. So no, it's not something going to happen. You can have oddball sources of combustion, which is you can have lenses outside. Sometimes people try to make a solar oven with a Fresnel lens from a television. I've sold these before when I recycle televisions, and the lens of a projection TV is a plastic, see-through plastic with rings in it, and it's actually Fresnel lens, Fresnel, and you can Google that. But it would hyper-focus the sun's rays like a super magnifying glass, because it magnifies your TV's image, projection TV image, to blow up the picture. So you have a big screen TV, and so it does that with the sun's rays. And so I remember once as a kid we tried this out, and we took that thing and we lit a fire on it with it in the safety of the driveway, which was paved with a garden hose ready, and we tried fire survival, like if we needed to survive and make a fire in a wilderness situation, could we do it with this lens? And it's part of the survival kits. They might be the size of your hand, but it'll be a little plastic Fresnel lens to start a fire with the sun. And we successfully did it. Yay! And then we did a stupid thing. We put the Fresnel lens on the side of the house. We leaned it up against the side of the house in the shade. But as the hours wore on, that wasn't shade anymore. Now the sun's directly on it, and we came back out, and we were melting the siding of our house. So there's kind of oddball ignition sources like that are extremely rare freak accidents. But in reality, most of these things, if you have an ignition source, it's lightning if it's natural. It's power lines, and it's vehicles, and people accidentally throwing a spark into dry grass doing their yard work and such. Or some burn that would have been okay getting out of control with a change of the weather, like somebody violating a burn ban and just doing their normal thing, raking the leaves on their property or the pine needles. Occasionally you got a vehicle that can start it. Somebody has a motorcycle and drives over hot grass. You have car accidents frequently starting these. But no, like the landscape doesn't just spontaneously combust. We don't have to worry about that. It's extremely rare. Now, a sleeper fire is something we do have to worry about, and technology will be the thing that prevents those. Sleeper fires are a lightning or some other reason for a fire, like strikes a tree, or maybe strikes the ground, and this fire is in the duff or inside of a tree, and just hollowing out the tree and burning slowly. like if it doesn't have enough oxygen. And so it just barely produces any smoke. You could even walk and hike past it within eyeshot and not see it, because it starts a smoldering fire. And a smoldering fire is one without flames, but it's just like the coals in a fire, the morning after a campfire. And it will spread, like a tree's bark can be on fire from the inside. And the actual living heartwood of the tree and the space between the wood and the bark is so small that not a lot of oxygen gets in there. And so it'll start eating that tree very slowly, and only if a part of the tree collapses will you see that the fire get enough oxygen. And all of a sudden, months after a lightning strike, you get a fire there. And it's months later. It may have even rained a little bit. But those are called sleeper fires. It can be in the root system of a tree. It could be that the rain, the storm, and lightning strikes a tree, the rain burns it out, but it went down into the roots, and it's smoldering there and burning the roots underground. And if wind picks up, then the whole dang tree is on fire, and it just starts up again. These are called sleeper fires, and they're the ones that go undetected for a long period of time. But in the future, if we have more cams and more drones and such, we will be able to, every time there's a lightning strike detected, which we can do with satellites, we'll just dispatch drones to go check out the area, and they'll have FLIR, infrared modes, thermal imaging modes. They'll be able to look at the general area and verify, yeah, nothing happened. This will be a new era of firefighting. There's a lot to look forward to with technology. The only thing limiting us from doing that kind of stuff right now is the batteries of drones. But if we have drones on hydrogen fuel cells or some other type of power, then we could have drones dispatched to give us a quick look at things, so that we can know what ground resources and aerial resources to send. Looking back at the chat, are there any firefighters on here? Yeah, it's Torin. Torin is. He has been quiet for a bit. I don't know if he's still with us. So Bugs Bunny says 1 mile away from my house is several acres of hay fields. Yeah, but they don't usually spontaneously combust in the field. It's usually after them being baled, and that's one of the reasons that that farmers will get them underneath, put them in a barn immediately. They don't typically want to leave a hay bale out where rain can get to it or the morning dew. They want to harvest on a dry day and let it dry out, bale on a dry day, and then pick them up on the same day and get them underneath shelter. Ironically, one of the worst historic fires we ever had in Oregon was the tragic loss of the and I'll show you a picture of it before I sign off here, the Tillamook Naval Air Station fire, which burned down one of the two blimp hangars. So let's see if I can give you an image. It was so preventable. Sorry. This is one of the world's largest wooden structures. I mean, they built many different cookie cutter. I mean, they had a cookie cutter design and built many around the country for World War II. It was a blimp hangar, shelters the blimps. There's a blimp right there. It could shelter many, and look how it tragically burned down in the early 90s. So it happened on August 22nd, 25 years ago. I don't know what date exactly. 2017, 25 years prior to 2017. And the reason that the fire, that it got out of control, and the reason the fire started was that the Tillamook farmers put hay in there to store hay. They rented it out. It was rented to the local community, this priceless historic structure. There's so much wood. It's a wood frame structure that it was like entire forests of Oregon were cut down to build it. And to just lose it to fire is a double tragedy. There's a twin that's over here to the right. And today the twin is still standing. But it was so foolish to put hay in a historic structure and like it was a barn. And today these concrete pillars are still standing. I can show you someday in the future. I drove right up to them for history time. I want to make a documentary about this. But that fire was so large with this single structure fire that I saw it. My family saw it. We happened to be by Forest Grove at the time. You could see it from Portland as a big red glow on the horizon, and that was seeing it on the other side of the mountains, of the Coast Range Mountains. So this is at the coast, and you could see it from Portland, and more than hour and a half's drive away. And that's just one structure going up. So it's stupid to store hay inside of historic structures. That is the big takeaway lesson. Why can't I can't get this window to shut? Why is it? Okay, there we go. But that was an example of spontaneous hay combustion. So it's one of the reasons why barns are no longer outbuildings, are now outbuildings. In the past, people used to store hay underneath and their animals underneath the building, like in Russia, especially in high altitude places, because the body heat of the animals underneath would rise and heat your house from the ground up. And so even in the Middle East and places like that, when they didn't have a lot of fuel to burn for heat, the inn that supposedly Jesus was born in, like people think he was born in a barn because he was with the animals. That would have been underneath the inn where people park their animals, like a parking garage, and they eat the hay and stuff, and then people had lodging in the floor above. So if there's no room in the inn, he basically went to the basement. But too many fires happened, and especially in the conditions of Western Europe and whatnot, so the tradition became store your hay and your animal feed away from your house, not beneath it. But that's one of the very few examples of somewhat frequently occurring spontaneous combustion. So Tim says, I seen the video of the landlocked boat you did, and a video of me wearing the cat face mask. You did 2 more videos like that boat one. Loved it. Thanks. I have a lot of footage I'm sitting on. If people will help me get a camera, I will go cover these fires live. I shot one yesterday, the aftermath of a fire, with my cell phone. If you want to throw money at me and help me, Catherine.Davidson.wildfires@gmail.com. That's how you can send money, with an email to me, and I can get that and improve the stream and buy more gear and buy the camera that would allow me to see me in the dark and film fires live. I want to go on a trip down here and film fire aftermath. What is paradise like now? What is Shasta like now? What are all these communities like now? And go and film the last remaining historical structures before they burn up. Last year I was going to go do this in Plumas County and film it, because I knew after getting the wake-up call of seeing what happened in Butte County, and the documentary I could no longer make, I decided to do Plumas County and to see it on fire now, right before I get there. Like, I literally was planning to go Memorial Day weekend. I just thought, man, just as soon as I get my vaccination, I'm going. And real life issues got in the way. I could have been filming there already, but it's money. It was gas is $5 a gallon up by Almanor right now. It's $4 a gallon in the valley. It would take me hundreds of dollars just to arrive, and then to wander around hundreds more. And I'd be doing it with a cell phone unless I have enough money for a good camera. But that's what my job was going to be, not really covering fires. Documentary filmmaking. And I'm a student of that right now. I've got my education. I can do the basics. I just need the funds. So I want to interview the survivors. How did they survive? Make videos on fire survival. Small, little chunks where people can watch them in a playlist. I want to work with fire departments, interview the captains and the chiefs, the firefighters themselves who want to tell stories, so the public can be informed about what to do. And we'll cover the miracle survivals as well as analyze the fatalities, respectfully, of course, and anonymously. And just say, this person lived. Why? This person didn't. Why? What are the lessons to be learned here? That's the only reason I would cover disaster, is to help prevent new ones. And education is key. So if you'd like to help me at all, I will help. I will use all of the funds to do this as my message, to help the situation. Everything will go into documenting what's going on now, because this will become part of the historical record, and it'll help me get the message out. If I am not funded by people seeing my videos, then I have to work, and that means that I can't make the videos. So I'm at a situation right now where I have lots of free time. I do not have lots of free money. If I had the funds, I could be ready at a moment's notice and arrive on the scene, and perhaps even get a press pass and affiliate with a couple of media places. I have made some connections that way, and I could, at a moment's notice, go and cover fires. That's a dream. And I would like to be down there covering this from down there right now. So I do have a lot to share, and my real fundraiser will occur later. Right now, I don't want money that should go to victims. If you are thinking of donating, please see to the victims first. They could use a hand when they're in their evacuation shelters. You could go there, like where they have new shelters. They're opening up at Oroville and such. Take them things that they need, like just go through your house, the toothbrushes that your dentist gave you're not using. You can make a toiletry kit. Take your old luggage that you don't like anymore. The number one thing evacuees need is luggage. They don't have anywhere to put what people give them. What people give them is donations and clothes. They can use some garbage bags, toiletries. If you have an old bottle of cologne, they usually like that because it gets the smell of fire off of them. Give them cell phone minute cards, give them cell phones, give them chargers, the extra ones you have laying around the house, your old cell phone, that could really help somebody. Give them gas cards, give them gift cards. They'll need cash. Ways that they can communicate with their family is super important, and have, data plans and whatnot to look out. You can also go and prepay for a big storage unit, and then you can prepay for 6 months, something like that, and then hand them the keys and sign it off into their possession. Because when people lose a home, they'll get the donations when they can't store them. They won't be rebuilding and back into a place for 6 months, but as 6 months goes by, there's no more donations. So it's heartbreaking when somebody comes and says, hey, have my old bedroom set and have all this kitchen stuff and all these pots and pans, and you don't have anywhere to place it. So there's a lot of things that you can do, and when I arrive at these places, I do similar things. But I think that getting people's stories out is the most important thing that I can do to help them with their own fundraisers, their own personal GoFundMes. They have to be on camera. They have to say what was lost. They have to explain their story. And that's what gets people to open their hearts and their wallets. And that's what I plan to do as well. So it'll all depend on funding. But please see to victims first. And when you have extra leftover money, that's the only thing that I would accept. Don't... If you have extra money, these people need help. I didn't accept a dime, just food. If you want to help me, you can help me with food too. That's money I could use. If I don't have to buy food, you can get me Uber Eats gift certificates and send them to that email. You can get me some gas cards, or McDonald's. There's McDonald's everywhere. That sort of thing, and I will use that and then have more money to put towards my stream and getting the word out to the public. A dream that I would have is going around to different fire stations and saying, what do you want the public to know? And then if they're willing to show me, like, let's do demos. Let's light something on fire and explain, hey, like cadet heaters are dangerous. Even more dangerous when you're so foolish that you want to blow the dust out of them with canned air, because you know what? Canned air has chemicals inside, and that little moist thing that's cold when you shake up the can, that's a propellant that's flammable. So never put Never clean your heaters with canned air, because this is what happens if there's a spark. And then we would light one on fire, and there would be this whoosh, and then people would realize, oh wow, that's fire danger. I want to make fire safety videos like that. But that's all going to depend on funding. What can I do? And so far, the new way of getting method out to the public is they want people like me to do this stuff. If you have a similar thing, like if you're a media production student and you're not you're making a name for yourself, you don't know where to start with public service. They're pretty patient with you not looking like, your stuff won't look like a Hollywood director made it. But they want to get information out to the public, and they have a problem. So practice a bit on your own and then go volunteer. A lot of times fire districts in the off season, they want to get messages to the public, the dangers of Christmas trees, but ones the public doesn't know about. Like the stupid, let's make a lantern out of an orange peel stuff on Facebook that's going to get a lot of people killed, They'll volunteer your time as a media student. Say, here's my camera. What do you want the public to know? That's the way you can help. That's the way you can help a situation. So, if anybody else has any questions, I'll end the stream and try to get to sleep. I don't see that there's anything new to report on the situation. They're saying they updated the fly fire 5 hours ago. It's 4,300 acres, 5% contained. There's nothing new about that situation. All the links are in the chat if you want to follow it. I was hoping they'd have an outlook. So the outlook, on the fly fire is they plan to do a combination of indirect and direct attack with dozer lines. Projected activity for the fly fire here. Fire will continue to spread northeast, towards Mount Huff and spreading east towards Quincy, with possible evacuations issued. So it's north of Quincy, but that can change. So it's going right towards Taylorsville. And weather concerns. Tonight, dense smoke and haze will continue, especially in any of in the valleys, sheltered areas, and/or drainage basins. And so winds across much of the area should subside down to below 10 miles an hour, with down valley and downslope flows becoming well established. Overnight humidity recovery will improve compared to Friday night and Saturday morning, but the values tonight and Sunday are still expected to remain critical. Maximum relative humidity will range between 15 and 35%, with more of the recovery in the valleys, in the sheltered areas and drainage areas. So like in the shade. Sunday has the potential to be hot, dry, and breezy, along with dense smoke along most of the Dixie fire. The threat for smoke columns reaching pyrocumulus status, which is like a volcano, will increase with isolated lightning strikes becoming an increased possibility. Strong, gusty, and erratic winds can be expected in the vicinity of the pyrocumulus cloud column. Meaning, translation, it'll make its own weather, we'll see what it does. That's it. They're still studying how that works. So, it's a big question mark, a big unknown. Like I said before, tonight is a critical night of winds being relatively calm. This is a perfect night for them to be lighting these protective fires in front of the main fire. And it's a perfect night to be strengthening the dozer lines and gearing up for the battles, the windy battles of the days ahead. So, we're in the dark. We can't hear them. Last year, we could hear them all night. And we heard first. We didn't have to wait for updates. We heard what was going on the line as it happened. But we don't have that feed. Nobody is up there as a ham radio operator listening and giving it to broadcastify.com. It's offline. So hopefully somebody in the future will man the station, so to speak, and set their thing up so that we can hear what's going on. I think it's part of critical survival. My best advice last year was get yourself a radio and listen to the firefighters. It still is my best advice now. Unfortunately, it's got short range. But if you can listen to them, if they're in your neighborhood or in the vicinity, if they say the fires jumped the line, oh my God, then you'll know, and you don't have to wait for somebody to knock on your door. And we were listening live, and we heard it first on my stream, where evacuations happened before they even appeared on Twitter and social media. But I'm so disappointed that we can't do that again this year. We are in the dark. So it's more important this year to just evacuate and get out of the fire's way so that these experts up there can just do their jobs. Don't worry about anything else except your life. Your property, there's a lot of law enforcement and they're looking after it. Don't worry about looters and crap. You could get your own neighborhood burned down if you do not evacuate, because they'll stop what they're doing to protect the neighborhood to come to your door. Don't be the kind of person that causes that to happen. Sometimes leaving is the best thing you can do to protect your own property, because they will take up positions and protect entire neighborhoods. And just go. So we'll see what tomorrow brings us. If anybody has any questions, last call. And I'm scrolling up a little bit. I don't think I missed any. Let's see here. Looking here, there's general chatter amongst your guys, amongst yourselves. So Bugs has got a link. Let's check it out, Bugs. Supervisory forestry technician prevention. Oh, there's a good job. Yeah, that's cool. I'll leave you with this. You guys want a job? Supervisory forestry technician. Prevention. Overview. Accepting applications. It's a competitive service here. And it's either competitive, accepted, and senior executive is competitive. You want to make anywhere from 48 to 69 grand a year, full time. So that's pretty decent job there. And let's see, turn off this dark mode. This job is open to the public, U.S. citizens, nationals, and those who owe allegiance to the United States. Career transitions, federal employees who meet the definition of surplus and displaced. It's open until August 9th. You can make your application. It's Blairsden, California, which is over by Portola, east of where this fire is. Your relocation expenses are going to be reimbursed. Duties. This type of your responsibilities. Respond in initial attack capacity on fires within the response area. May supervise multiple firefighting resources on initial or extended attack, or serve in other fire positions as qualified or assigned. Developed a district fire prevention plan and has a reduction plan. Develops and implements a mass media information plan. Wow. That's actually two different lines of work. I would think that would be somebody else's job. Honestly, somebody like me, to develop and implement a mass media information plan. Okay, but that's just my input. Review development plans for compliance with fire safe practices. Yeah, so if you've got firefighting experience, this would be great job. If you want a great job like this, what you should do is go become a firefighter, a volunteer, and start there. And you'll get your experience, and then you'll take your classes, and you'll get certifications. You'll get experience, and you can do this stuff. That's pretty dang cool. You'll supervise inspections, power lines and stuff. Yeah, this would be the kind of job that I'd probably have if I weren't a writer / wannabe video / wannabe documentary filmmaker. So that's not too bad. Yeah, check it out. The link in the description. Libertus Invictus, welcome. What's the frequency for the firefighters around Taylorsville? I don't know. You know what? There's a website. Gosh, who was showing me the website? Perfect job for me? Nope, I am not qualified for that. I don't know enough about wildland firefighting to make the plan. But the media plan, how to talk to the public, would be my perfect job. That one. But experts should be in charge of This is like being a head honcho here. This is like being a boss. That's being the sheriff in town and walking around and you're inspecting things and saying, pick up that slack, boys. I want to see this place fire safe. You're getting a fine. This is telling power companies what to do. That's bossing them around. You better have a whole lot of experience for that one. And that's a good job, though. If I weren't a writer and if I had a robust, working physical body that was not tiny like a jockey, I probably would have been a first responder and then graduated to a job kind of like this. It just depends, but I have a tiny, frail body like a jockey. I could have been a jockey. That's more of my stature. So this link is in chat if you're interested in a job like that. And I was going to show you radio frequencies. What was that? Anybody remember? I had it bookmarked the other day. I don't think it's at the handy. General resources, maybe. Checking it out. There is a couple of website databases for ham radio operators that show firefighters' frequencies. So bear with me here off screen. Let's look at the live image of Indian Ridge. That's the live image. It'll keep updating. Pretty much that ridge burned off today, and it's not facing the correct angle. It needs to swivel to the left, and we would see where the fire's traveling. So that's kind of boring. So what was it? Anybody in chat know? Writing is part of the job? Yeah, but I don't have the boots on the ground experience. That would be for somebody who knew, like who could write a book, a comprehensive book about wildland firefighting, and I barely know anything about it. I know about fire behavior. I know about survival. I know about history. I know about communications. I've never been on the line with firefighters, and I just know the very basics. It's a very exciting time to be in wildland firefighting and the science of it, because they're developing new science. And it's going to be a split job to know what to do in the situation, split between knowing the weather and how that affects fires and computer modeling. That is not going to be a firefighter that does that job. It should be. Wow. It should be. I'll read more of the description, but, it seems like if you don't have enough experience, you may miss some red flags that somebody with a trained eye would know. If they give you a ton of training on it, that's a different story. If this is one of those jobs where you're training on the job for a year or two before you assume command, that would be good. Let's see here. What is that? If nobody else has the link, I'll go try to look at it to find first responder radio frequencies list. I thought I bookmarked it. It's on my stream from the other day. Yeah, radioreference.com is one of them. So, see here. This was one that you can click on. California, for example, that's Nevada County. That's going to be Plumas County. You click on your agencies, and you have your sheriff's office radio frequencies here. You can get your Baofeng radio and tune into many of these, especially in the 400 spectrum down here. That's EMS. If it's in the 800 frequency spectrum, then you need a really, really expensive, $200 plus radio, but then you can hear it. So at fire, we've got Lake Almanor Fire. Here's its frequency for fire tactics and fire dispatch. Dispatch would be the one to constantly have on all night, because dispatch is going to be talking about all the rest of these together. But if you're on just one of these, it might be worth it to be on it to monitor what they're doing live, like if it's somewhat near you. But dispatch would be able to give information about fire behavior that's further away for you than you can hear. Dispatch will be telling other units to go towards a crisis, and they'll be explaining what the crisis is or whatever development is. So dispatch is a great place to start. So For Quincy, you tune into 154.250. And if you're in Quincy, you might be able to pick them up. I would highly recommend getting the super antennas that you can buy for your radio, or even have one mounted to the side of the house, that sort of a deal. So Bug says there's lower levels of the same job. Okay, I'm starting to understand it. But then again, if I was if that was my job and that was full time, I don't know that I could spread the message and do the media. I kind of feel like I have a calling already, but I'm sure that would be one heck of an awesome job. So radioreference.com is one of these. There's another couple other ones. You just get on ham radio forums, and they're going to have all the links that you want. That's how you can monitor things. And get yourself a Baofeng radio or a Motorola. That's in a different stream of mine where we were messing around with the radios more than a week ago. But I gotta go. It's the middle of the night again, and I want to have a good sleep schedule. I think around 7 in the morning I'll probably tune in to see what's going on with the 7 o'clock update. So if I can, I'll stream again at that point. Let's look at what the fire's doing. See if we've had any sort of update with the it looks the same. The satellites haven't updated, at least not this one. We can go to GOES, and things look the same. You can see where the new detections of heat are. This red does not mean hotter or whatever. It means newer detections of heat, less than 10 minutes old. That's all it's talking about, and we know that the fire is in these locations already. We don't see it in particularly new locations or unexpected locations. So we don't know what's going on. My stream would be a lot better if I could go to sleep and I leave the radio on, but it's not being broadcast right now. So thank you all for being here. Time for Betty Bye, and I'll see if I can be back at 7. That's when the live community update is. The links are in my description. It's going to be on CAL FIRE or Butte County's Facebook page. That's one place to watch it. They also have links to their Zoom, etc. And anybody who's anxious about the situation, know that this is tonight and last night were 2 very good days that they've had to put a lot of defensive lines in place and to do a lot of firing, which is to create more defensible space. Even though the outlook for the weather is gloomy, and even though this is a monster and it's huge and this is nightmarish terrain to work in, they're doing everything that they can, and we now know everything that we could possibly know about the situation. And so we just wait until we know more. There's no use at all worrying once you've done everything you can do. You just don't worry until you get new bad news, right? No news is good news at this point. So everybody, good night, and sleep well, and don't worry, because everything that's going to happen is going to happen. So it's time to just realize the day is done. Just go to sleep, and you'll be fresh for whatever you need to face the next day. Everything's all right, and it will be all right, and we'll get through things together. Good night.